We're now recording.
I'd like to call to order the Board of Supervisors monthly meeting for the San Carlos Estates Water Control District for Tuesday, August 16th. Roll call of officers. Supervisor Ben Bogas, Supervisor Jim Bradford, Supervisor Jennifer Finazzo, Engineer Bill Morris, Richard Pringle's attorney, Secretary Treasurer Chris Lawson, and 19 guests. Mr. Morris, you want to start us off?
Thank you. The engineer's report for this month, we currently have 65 open permits with 3 new permits and 3 closed permits. So we've held steady for this past month. Those all appear to be progressing as normal, as would be expected. Annual maintenance, annual reporting, the only update to provide, we have finally finished the testing regime for the water quality reporting that's due with the annual report. We will be pulling the monitoring stations out over in the next several weeks as we finish the cycle, and that will conclude the information collection for the annual report this year.
That'll be done within the next month.
I believe that's done the end of October, if I remember the cycle correctly.
So Ben, would the question then be, should Morris DePue, because
Finish
they've
that?
done it for the entire year, finish this cycle's reporting and permit?
Yeah, I would hate to see a changeover midstream.
Well,
What are your thoughts?
I would then think that maybe there should be a combined working to the conclusion of Bill's.
To turn it over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and if that's okay, and if Bill will work with that, that's how I think we should work there.
If it pleases the board, we were expecting to be holding hands with our successor once they are retained, just to try to give them some reasonable degree of familiarity with what they're inheriting and some understanding of what the particulars are. So as long as the board is happy with us continuing to do that, then that's what we'll do.
Definitely.
That would be
That's really
Now we're really in trouble.
Thank you, Bill.
For you, you're good? Everything?
Unless there's any questions, that concludes my report.
Good. All right, for the chair's report, the only thing I have to report is this is my last meeting. I won't be at the annual landowners meeting on Saturday. And as far as I was informed, Mr. Pringle, correct me if I'm wrong, you were planning on having the monthly meeting after the annual landowners meeting
Right.
at the same time?
Yes.
Okay.
The regular Board of Supervisors meeting would occur immediately following the landowners meeting.
As soon
on that
as
same
the
Saturday.
election would take place and,
Right.
okay.
So we're not going to meet on the 20th,
Correct.
and the notice will
Yes.
say that. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so everything's going down that Saturday, just so everyone knows.
Now, were we having the annual meeting of the landowners
Yes.
and the board meeting on the same day, or
Yes.
were we having it on a separate day?
Same. Well, normally, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Please.
normally you have the Board of Supervisors meeting to elect the officers of the board and to do any other business for that month. That day, everybody's here, and that's what I normally do. Is I just normally notice that meeting, that Board of Supervisors meeting, to occur immediately following the annual landowners meeting. Yes, sir.
That's okay with me.
Okay, so I won't be here, so that's why I wanted you guys to know.
So while you're here, you'll get all
appointment.
that done and be finished
Yeah.
for the month, and then you won't have to come back the following Tuesday.
Okay.
So I need to update the calendar.
Cool. Treasurer's report.
We have received 100% of our annual tax revenues according to the reports. However, because of some prior year collections, we actually have about 800 left of CIP payments, tax payments that are still due, and probably a similar smaller amount of regular tax payments. But I've not received any notices from the county so far yet this month, so I don't expect any funding to happen this month. That amount that I am showing for CIP that is still not paid is about under $900. It's 800 and some odd dollars. So we in principle have collected 100% of our tax revenues. We right now have in the funds checking account about $124,000, but we have yet to pay some big bills that will come out next month. So we should, when we end the year in September, have ample funds to carry us to the next revenue period going into November, when we will receive our first set of checks going into next year. So we should not have any issues with that. Next month we're going to do a budget amendment to bring what we've spent this year to in alignment with what we had projected we would spend, so that it's more realistic, and that's as part of the auditor's reporting from last June, when so that it looks there's not a big variance, and it just kind of totals everything up.
How far apart is that right now?
If we look at the reports, the variance reports that you have here, different areas have different variances. The general maintenance was underreported because we had included the district acreage in the assessment amount, and so that's one of the true-up numbers that we have to fix. And with that comes the commissions and the discounts. I'm looking for the variance report here. The use of connection fees are about $5,000 short of what was projected. The other income is about $18,773,000 over what was projected. But if you recall, the auditor wanted us to change how we report the gate remote revenues and anything that we receive as a refund back for an expense that we paid. And there were two big expenses that we had gotten refunds, or three this past year. One was $9,700 for the repair of the guardrail on Stillwell. And then we had gotten reimbursement for the expenses for the vacation of the easement for Brad Gallagher. And we also received Amarillo culvert repair. So that was where we only had included in other income $20,000, which was what we get from the Brooks. We've almost doubled that when we add in the gate revenue and those other items. General maintenance tax revenue, the actual amount is $485,000. We had in our budget $471,000. We did fund the contingency fund in full. The CIP tax revenue, we projected $567,405. We received actually $556,832. Payoff receipts, we only expected to receive $3,614. We actually got $11,854. And on the other big thing is bank income, interest income was we have like $3,900 in bank interest, and we did not nearly project that much, and that's probably because of what the Fed has done this year, raising rates as we've moved along the course of the year. So in terms of expenses, we are under budget for administration by $600 annualized. The auditor was $1,000 more than we expected. Our bank fees, we did some things to make that a little bit less. The drainage, again, we're short next month's bill, so when we add that $25,700 to what we spent of $72,000, we're going to be at like $97,700, and we budgeted $110,000. Engineering, we are going to probably break even there. The gate cost us this year about $1,500. We had projected $4,000. Insurance was a little low. We projected $6,400. It was $5,700. I'm sorry, that's the county property appraiser. The insurance was 11,389 projected, and we spent 12. That's kind of flat. Legal fees, I'm missing a number of months of bills, so I really don't know where we are with that. The miscellaneous is running right on track. Road expense, is budgeted 6,000, and we actually spent 16,683. But if you recall, if I add that $9,700 from the guardrail repair, which is what is part of that 16,000, that accounts for that difference. And then the swale mowing is right on track. Yes.
In the event of a hurricane, several hurricanes or whatever, where does that money come from for remediation on the district's properties and things like that?
For immediate repairs?
Yeah, where did that come from?
Okay, so what we have, and one of the things we're going to do tonight possibly is the auditor wanted us to assign funds balances. One was for the short-term emergency funding, such as a hurricane, to cover you from the time of the actual incident to the time when you have funding available. Okay. And so we're plugging in 50,000 of the Northern Trust funds for that. But let's just say we have this major catastrophe. Then we have to decide, are we going to get a loan to make those repairs, or are we going to dip into our unassigned contingency funds, which right now is at about $831,000.
Okay. Because
So
you're trying to cover the period between now and then the new
That's what the
subsequent funding.
right, that's what that 50 would be for.
Yeah, I was going to say we always had 50 in that fund.
Yeah, and then the other monies that are in the Northern Trust account is 85,000 because we have to have an amount that will cover us for the 3-month period from the beginning of the fiscal year at 10/1 until December, when we actually get the bulk of our tax revenues. So 85,000 of that's going to be assigned to cover that short-term period. Right now, we're not going to need. I don't expect that we'll need to use that unless we have some hurricane or something come up between now and
So
then.
it's December 1, the usual period where you get the bulk of the
Yeah, we get a little bit of money in November, and then we get a big chunk of it in December, and then it
tails off.
tails off. People pay quarterly. If they pay their quarterly amounts, but the county is paying kind of the month behind, so they collect it in November and they give it to you the next month.
Just for education, what were the costs after Irma?
Yeah, there's one question. What were they from Irma and others in the past? How do you assign 50,000? Is that based on historical past?
That was
expenses?
just something we were trying to come up with, and I
I
think
believe in
Ben,
years past,
you told
I think
me it was.
either 22 or 25,000. Is Judy here tonight or no? Do you remember? Was it?
No, I really can't, but I think it was more like 25.
It was
Because we
more.
had a lot of trees.
On the power lines.
Yeah.
Down when we had Gerald, and then we also had a couple of private contractors.
I remember. Yeah. For some reason, that's sticking in my head. Maybe that was the first number we got, and then it ended up being more once it all washed out.
We did get a reimbursement from FEMA,
Oh, that was some. Yes.
so
Okay.
that brought it back down again. So maybe
But that was kind of a number that stuck with us.
And the bulk of that expense was tree related, going in the ditches.
Yes. There was a couple little washout areas, but nothing that was to be,
And on power lines.
you know.
Well,
That's all.
FPL should eventually take care of it.
Yeah, that's all them. But yeah, the biggest thing was tree removal. From us, you know.
And I think that there were a lot of residents that kicked in and kept that cost down because they were doing the work in advance to try and just everybody chipped in and started
I know
cleaning up.
on my street, a bunch of the men kicked in. We got chainsaws. We went out
Open
and
the
cleaned
roads.
up. We did 5 roads that we did with my heavy equipment and stuff that I own, and we cleared the power lines, got the power back on all the way over to Lucy, was it? From Catskill to Lucy.
What was the average power outage time?
2 weeks. 14 days.
We were out 9 days when we got a hold of the power company and asked them how come we weren't getting power back. And they said because nobody would clear the power lines and they had nobody available to do it. So I went and rounded up some guys. We went over, we had a telebooming forklift that was all-wheel drive. We built a bucket on the front end of it. The power company safetied the lines. We went out and cleared the lines, and by 6 o'clock that night, they turned the power back on those streets.
So I remember there was one at the front of Rhodes.
And we also cleared the roads up and down of all debris and driveways so people could get in and out of their driveways in the morning following the hurricane.
Good for you.
So that didn't cost anybody anything.
So my question would be to the board, is there a plan in the budget, I'm looking at these numbers, for the 2023 budget, money set aside to ensure that whether it's Jared's service or somebody else, they're assessing the areas that it's pretty obvious that these trees are coming over near the tree lines, the power lines, and start trimming those back so that we don't have an emergency where they're charging an exorbitant fee during a hurricane to clean them up. Have we forecasted that out?
Well,
I don't know if we want to start
Well,
talking about the
well,
budget stuff
yes,
now, or
it's-
can we table that question until we hit the budget?
sure.
Okay.
I think
Towards the
that's
end here.
what we do.
We're good with all that though?
Yep, that,
You done with your report? We're out here. Mr. Pringle? Attorney's report?
Yes, sir. You have several items on your old, new, and unfinished business, Mr. Chairman, that I can address when you get to those items. And in particular, one of the items that I would like to just make reference to at this point before you receive public input is down near the end of your business agenda, you have discussion of the budget.
Yes.
And one of the items that I have prepared and will ask you to consider adopting tonight so that we can get the information to the tax collector and to the property appraiser is the assessment resolution, the resolution to approve the two assessment rates that you have, the assessment rate for your maintenance budget, and then the assessment rate for the Series 2003 bond repayment for the interest and principal for the year. So I have the documentation to accomplish the approvals after you have your discussion. But I want to make sure to mention that the assessment resolution is the one, is one of the resolutions that you're going to consider on your agenda tonight, the resolution to set your two assessment rates.
That's a line item we could add?
It is actually there. It's the discussion of the budget and
Okay.
the approval of the, yes, sir, of the assessment resolution.
so I just need to add the word
Yes, ma'am.
assessment.
Right. The way the process works is you approve the assessments, and then you would approve the budget that fits with those assessment rates that you have approved after you discuss it all. I did interact, and I don't know if they are here this evening, but I did interact with the lawyer for the property owners of the 16-acre parcel. I can't remember whether it was at the last meeting or the meeting before, but at some point the board said, maybe it was 2 meetings ago, the board said for me to send a letter to the lawyer.
That was the last meeting.
Was it at the last meeting?
It was 2
But it
months
was 2
ago.
months ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Seems like it was a long time ago. But I did send the letter and said to the attorney that they had 5 days, is my recollection. I have a copy of the letter here. But that they have a short time to respond. I believe they may have provided some, but maybe not all the information that was required. I'm not sure, to the engineer, and then the engineer can talk about that if that is also on your agenda under 8991 Strike Lane.
Okay.
So I did send that letter, and I believe there was some documentation that was submitted to the engineer as a result of that letter. I can talk about the other things when they come up on your agenda, Mr. Chairman, or I can talk about them now.
Go one at a time. Why not?
Okay.
You fine?
Let me go. Yes, sir.
Comments from the guests and public? Input? Any questions? Anything?
Please, quick question on the resolutions, where it is located. I looked on their website and there's none of them up there.
When you guys please just state your names so we know and.
Fred DeWitt, 24299 Golden Eagle.
Perfect.
Yes, sir. I have them with me. I'll go through them, and we'll ask the board to
Public input at that time?
Yes, sir. To take public
So
input.
they weren't available prior to this meeting?
No,
You
sir.
looked at.
I think they're just drawn up right now.
Yes.
Or this week.
They haven't been voted on yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, but shouldn't shouldn't we be privy to it prior to, I believe, per
I
state
put-
statute, it's supposed to be on the website.
What I did put out on the website were this handout. This handout was put out on the website, which is available up there, which was the documentation for supporting what we are talking about tonight for the budget. So we did have that on the website.
So the
Under
resolution,
reports,
the resolution documents themselves simply adopt the rates of the assessments of the two assessment categories that the district still has in effect. So those will all be discussed. The budget information is separate, and the budget, as I indicated earlier, is adopted after the assessments are set. So the resolution this evening is for the adoption of the assessment rates. That's what that's for. The statute that deals with the website compliance requirements says that we're supposed to have the meeting agenda up. It used to say that we had to have all the backup material related to the agenda items attached to that. The law was changed several years ago to delete that requirement. So now the only requirement of the district related to the posting of the agenda is the posting of the agenda itself.
So, but why wouldn't you post it then?
So
Why wouldn't you post it then?
it was posted under the reports, under the reports
and there's
tab.
no-
Go down to the bottom where where it has the budget resolutions. Do you see something?
Yeah, it's at the very bottom. Instead
Yeah.
of at the top. And when you hit the link, it doesn't take you down to it.
That's one thing we're working on too.
Well, the link opens up.
No, I mean at the top where it says annual report or annual financials, it doesn't take you to the bottom. Where it's at, it's all the way at the very bottom.
Yeah.
And the chair is correct. We are doing additional work to the website to make
Yeah,
it easier to use.
Our auditor mentioned that in the report. It has to be updated, and it's a work in progress. All right.
So based on this forecast here, it looks like you have a 20.05% increase in the assessment.
It depends on which
Of course, your acreage, but
it depends on which way we go. There's two there, but
you
I don't
have a
think
9.55% or you have a 20%.
that depends on what the budget, what the board approves, which budget the board approves. When we have the discussion for the budget, we'll talk about it. We're not there yet. We're still on input,
Yes. Public input.
so if we can hold off on.
Confused, we're on input for what now again?
It's public input.
Just public input, but any questions about the discussions for the budget, if we can wait till we have till we
It's down at the end
start
here.
to that,
It's
that would be
coming up.
better.
There will be an additional public input opportunity when the budget discussion occurs. I think that's the easy way to describe it. This
I'm sorry to
is
sound stupid, but the public input then is for what? The
for
assessment in of itself?
Just
For-
anything coming up, anything in the future, any questions or problems anyone has.
anything related to any topic related to the water control district. If you, as an example, thought the ditches need to be cleaned out a different way, then
I do.
there's at least a public input opportunity, and this would be an opportunity for that to be brought up. And so,
I take that one right there, needs to be cleaned out.
okay. So, but that's, the idea is for this public input is this discussion enables the board members to then say, oh, that's something that we need to add to the agenda. We will add that to the agenda at the end so that there can be a decision on that. That's why it's in front of the business items,
I got it.
so that they can be added on.
I'm trying to understand
Yes,
the procedure of the bureaucracy.
yes.
Give us some
And it's
ideas
different.
if they want to run.
There's some basic standards, but then there are also a lot of individual differences that occur district to district. So
What statute did that affect, Mr. Franklin, when it changed a couple years ago?
That was 189. There's a general
I didn't
rule
see that.
on special districts that has a provision in it. It's 189. If you open the Florida statutes and you open chapter 189, there will be a reference to maybe website compliance, might be a phrase for a title of a subsection, and that's where it will be. I apologize, I don't remember that subsection.
Thank you.
So while you're talking about that, what Richard and I talked about last week or the week before last was we were going to add a tab to the website that talks about statutory requirements, and then we're going to go 1, and then we're going to have an answer, 2, and an answer, 3, so that it's all right
So people
there.
understand what statute or what case ruling
Yes.
supports the activities and actions of the board.
But
What underwrites the authority.
the website requirements, that's more website
Yes.
requirements.
So my suggestion was that we have a section that just deals with this one website compliance statute, and we'll refer to the section, and then there will be each of the subsections of the statute that requires a provision of some information on the website will be right there in connection back to the statutory reference.
Well, speaking of the website, I know I read in the auditor's report, that's one of the things that needs to be improved on, and the board's working on that.
Yes, sir.
But from a purely IT functionality aspect of the website, it's terrible. So I don't know if another website could be built in parallel and in like what they call sandbox development without being released to the public, and eventually pull over all the historical information and make the new website much more efficient. Because the way it is right now, it's very inefficient.
It's tough. Yeah, it's very tough.
It's like something that was built like that game Pixel 6. It's just like a bunch of sticks on top of each other.
They redid the website, Judy, back in 2012, 2013? When did the board redo the website from when Bud had .org site?
It was a while back.
It was a while back. So I mean, they did change it. They didn't do a pixie stick thing, but they did change it and do a complete overhaul. They probably did it very inexpensively instead of not wanting to spend a lot of money to do a really nice website. I can tell you from my perspective, it's really difficult to manage.
To navigate. It's a very difficult website to navigate. Yes, I agree. Okay, whatever. So it's something the board's going to have to keep working on.
Yes.
There was a question right there.
Any other questions? Any other input?
You had a
I just wanted to let them know I was here. The 8991 strike language.
Perfect. All right.
Dave May, Catskill Drive. In the water district here, I'm a little fascinated with how the water drains out of the whole district. So I've been watching a lot of water flow since the rain started. And what I've come to the conclusion is that spillway box, that's that strike and tuck, controls the water out of those filtration ponds and into the canal at Tuck. And I'm there on that property quite a bit. And I've met a couple people who do that work. And Jim knows some of this story, but apparently somebody decides when to open that and call somebody else to come out and open it and when to close it. So I'd just like to know how those decisions get made. And so what I'm worried about is the decisions are made in the interest of somebody that has different interests than all of us. That's what I'm getting at. So
It's the company that manages the filter swamp, that maintains it and controls the water levels in it. It's a company we pay monthly. Mr. Morris, do you have any other input on that? That's pretty much it, correct?
That's my understanding as well.
Yeah,
okay, so
they're the ones that kind of control the trees in it, and they manage that filter swamp, and
okay.
they know how much water it can take at any certain time, and they pregame for hurricanes. I've seen them go out and try to do stuff like that.
But just so my observation is that controls the water backing up into those filter swamps, which is good because it goes back to the groundwater and every waste of that. There's a few trees in there that are fine, but controlling the water backing up the swamp is the thing that controls the upstream culverts. 20 miles of culverts upstream from that, when those are full, unless it's a huge deluge, when those are full, it's solely because that spillway has been closed. And so I just want everybody to know that if you have too much water in front of your house, it might be, and I would say it's likely, that it's because somebody has decided that spillway should be closed and back up the water. Because I've seen them open it, I've seen the whole district get cleared out.
Yeah.
So,
How's it been this year over last year? I remember I used to keep, I'm at the end of Rhodes, I used to keep a rake by the post because it was filthy, it always got blocked with sticks, and anybody, and Mike on my street would come by and rake it off the two things. But this past year, actually it's been pretty good at the end of that road. I'm not sure, again, I don't go around and look at them all, but do we know a rainfall year over year, what it's been like?
I don't know this year. The only one I remember was the hurricane year, and it was ridiculous.
Well,
And that was, to be expected.
We were already saturated before we got that rainfall,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like,
And that wasn't even Mr. Brown came in and reported to us that time and showed us that the swamp did what it's designed to do, and it was, it was put through a heck of a trial run there, but it worked.
Judy has a-
So, Judy,
I
please.
just want to say that the company is Synecological
That's it.
Associates, and it's run by somebody with Brown Palms. And there's a definite reason why that water has to back up at certain times, and it's because some of the plants that are in the filter swamp require a certain amount of water certain times of the year. And I know that he does monitor it very carefully. And I know that sometimes it may not seem like it's the right thing to do, but that I know we had a problem a couple of years ago where the water, you had to back the water up because to make sure you save those plants. So just so you know, it is monitored.
And honestly, if you ever see him out there, talk to him. He's a wealth of knowledge, and he's very easy to talk to.
And I looked at those filter swamps, and there's cypress trees in there, there's some red maples, there's some other things. Like, nobody loves trees more than I do. But my assessment, I've planted thousands of trees in my life. I don't think those trees are at any risk of having any problem with the waters. That, first of all, those filter swamps are a foot below grade. That's never going to dry out, and cypress trees do not need the standard 2 feet of water. So, again, this is my unprofessional expert opinion, and all I'm saying is if somebody's opinion is that a couple cypress trees need more water than I think they need, and therefore to do that, to accomplish that, now we have 20 miles of culverts in front of all of our houses filled up. Maybe that's good. Maybe we I have little tadpoles in front of my house, and that's good.
We have to let it drain. There is a whole purpose to this whole thing. A lot of it is to settle and drain into the swamp, or drain into the ground before it even makes it to the filter swamp. So it's a big, never-ending balance. Like I said, if you ever see Mr. Brown out there, I would talk to him. He's very interesting to talk to.
Again, Mr. Brown doesn't live in our community.
We pay him, though, to manage that swamp.
Well, that seems to be the question, is that we do pay him to do that. I was trying not to say anything, but I have spoken with him numerous times, and I do believe that Dave has met and spoke with him. I know that Chris and I walked the whole swamp with him before, and I have spoken with other ecologists that have indicated that pond is about 10 years over its life expectancy of doing the job that was originally set up there to do. And one of the other issues being is that when we have people right here in our community that could work with Mr. Brown, open and close the gate, we pay somebody from San Carlos Park to come up and look at the water levels to call him up on the phone and say what the level is, and he says, oh, okay, you don't need to open it right now, go back home. Then,
I agree.
Next day, the guy comes back and he says, oh, okay, it's up high enough now. You can open it. We have people right here, just like this gentleman here. I'm sorry, I don't have your name. Alan. Okay, your short sort of ring. So anyway, but even in appreciation of the fact that I heard you say you went down and raked out some of those grade areas to allow the water to transfer A lot of people in our community have done that for years. So in conjunction with that, that's saved our community thousands and thousands of dollars. And I think a partnership with the community and the water board is amazing when we can do those kind of things. And as far as that gate goes, it ought to be a community thing. Even if Mr. Brown continues to manage it, why people within the community can't partake in helping out. And I'm sure we've got people who would, paid or not, they would do it. And yet it's got a different code on it. You can't undo the chain. It's totally related to him. And so like I said, I've spoke with other companies that are doing exactly what he's doing.
And they're saying that.
And they've indicated that that swamp is 10 years past its life expectancy. So what it's at, that the impact that it actually has is minimal as far as the filtration system goes today. So true or not, I don't have it in writing. I've only
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know anything about filter swamps,
Yeah.
I just know.
And I was actually speaking with one of them this morning, and I believe I was talking with Dave right there when he called me this morning, and I just happened to be talking with him for a couple minutes about one of these Volkswagens, and this gentleman called me to tell me what was going on with it, so he heard part of the conversation. So, with that being said, and what Dave over here happens to say, I think it deserves us taking a look at it down the road.
Can I make a suggestion for the board? Based on the 1970 and the 2005 Water District Plan that the statute says you have to have, I'd look at the 2005 because that's the most current one, and find out, is there any language in it that actually specifically indicates there should or should not be a Mr. Brown or a retention pond, and if it doesn't, then I think the board make a decision, is it cost effective for Mr. Brown to keep running down here?
Yeah, definitely.
Mr. Chairman,
So, please.
oftentimes there is a permit requirement that is connected into the services that the ecologist might provide. That might be why there's a lot on the gate. A lot of times they have to sign a certification that they're doing what they're supposed to do.
Okay.
So if that is not a requirement, then yes, sir, everything that's been discussed here with regard to what the residents are able to do could work. But oftentimes there are permit requirements that have some obligations of those professional services guys.
That's something that we looked into.
If I could just make a suggestion, I don't think that's something we're gonna deal with here tonight.
Yeah.
And I think we ought to
Well,
just, we ought to take a look in the near future, putting together even people from the community that might wanna help look into that and come out with a resolution. So,
Let's see what those permit requirements are. You're right, the water control plan
Bill,
does.
do you have any comments to
Also,
offer
what
about this?
the cost of redoing the detention pond might be,
Something
if it needs to be done.
and if they need to be
In
done,
relation
and
to
they're
the
beyond their
drainage
date,
or the
so-
rain off?
Yeah.
Or
Let me
the
just-
need for it or the not, is it part of the permit or?
The filter swamp came about as if I remember correctly, I think it was a grant that was provided by South Florida Water Management District, which they pay a certain amount of money for the plant materials to be installed, and the operation parameters were set based on their need to have water established for their survival. They are living materials. They do have nutrient uptake capacity. Beyond that, that is really the purpose that they were designed to serve.
So there's no requirement in our permit to have that, is what you're
It's
saying?
not a specific requirement that is written into the permit. There were some things that were, I want to say, agreed to with South Florida Water Management District as a part of that grant approval. I have no idea whether the obligation still exists today. I'm not sure that I understand the notion that it no longer serves the function that it was intended to serve, but in any event, it's there. It's been operated since about 2007, I want to say, when that was established. It serves a function.
So I would tend to agree. I think those filter ponds they serve the purpose of the filter pond, they're keeping some cypress trees wet, which is fine. My question is, are those filter ponds and optimizing a couple red maples and cypress trees, is the interest of those trees
The district.
greater than the interest of all of our properties? And are we risking any chance of flooding if that's closed? Because, so that's my question. And I think we need to I'd like to keep this issue open, put it on the agenda, because frankly, I find a lot of these comments are finding a little dismissive. So, is there actually a statute that says an ecologist has to decide when to open it? So, I mean, everybody's going, yeah, I know plants, I know trees, I know water, I know but if that's true, if it's not true, please don't say it, because it's just dismissive.
No, sir, I think what I said was there may be a permit requirement. If
But the
there,
effect of it, so you're the man with the tie, the effect of when you say that, everybody's, oh, okay, we can't do anything, we move on. And I'm the jerk here, I know, but
you're welcome to use my time.
I gave those up. No, I'm just saying that, you know, I've been in Florida 4 years, and what's the Yogi Bear say? You can observe a lot by watching. I'm out there every day. I'm watching the water. I'm watching what happens when the gates close and it's open. So I know. And what I'm hearing doesn't make sense. Just doesn't make sense.
So, Bill, if the filter swamp were totally full to the brim, and then that gate gets open and that water gets dispersed into the Mariah Canal and then flows all the way around, are we in danger of flooding their community?
That's not a question that's easy to answer. It is not the only drain for the district. There are drains located at the end of every north-south street in the district. So it's not a situation where everybody is relying on one point and one point only. That drain handles largely a segment of Strike Lane. Everything from a certain point on Strike Lane drains that west and then out towards, or it comes around through some culverts and then out the control structure that everybody has referred to with the gate on it. The operation of it, I was not part of that particular setup. Brown Collins, as was discussed, he is the designee for that, who the Water Management District approved. He has been the one responsible to operate that since it was set up. Could it be changed? Probably. I think there's probably a process that would need to be undertaken in order to officiate that, to make sure that the district is not running afoul of any sort of either agreement or permit requirements or something along those lines that was used to establish that. Normally, there are different parameters, different hydraulic parameters that are designed into a control structure. The sluice gate that is used is not a standard piece of equipment. There are other more sophisticated methods that are available that have a cost associated with them as well. Those are things that can be employed to facilitate the same function. But you know, there's a lot of, I guess what I'm trying to say in a long-winded way is there are a number of options available. It just requires someone having enough interest to want to change it for a particular reason.
Can we put on the agenda and invite him to come?
Definitely, I think that's pretty good.
Put on the agenda.
Filter swamp?
Yep.
I don't want to get that to South Florida
For next-
Water
next
Management
meeting.
District too.
Pardon?
South Florida Water Management District's going to want to know a lot about it too. They're like the mafia of the Southwest Florida when it comes to water movement. So,
And I just suggest to the board that based on the 2005 water plan that SCUD is to follow, there's a paragraph here that kind of sums it all up. Taking together regulations, permits require SCUD to comply with water quality standards preventing suspended particles and other pollutants from entering or being discharged from the skewed system. Specifically, skewed must retrofit the system, provide removal particles of polluted runoff, and also best management practices, stabilize, of course, the dirt, roadways, the swales, any filtration, retention, and other water quality standards. To me, that's a 100,000-foot view that says maybe this idea 17 years ago was a great idea, and in 2007, now maybe it's not applicable anymore.
Not
To
necessarily.
me, it's the boards is at the best managed practice now, having that filtration plant. Maybe it's not effective anymore. That's all I was suggesting.
Please, Mr. Bradford.
Thank God. I'm at Bradford, and I think that people need to step back, and for the people that stayed here during Irma in our subdivision, which I was one of them, and the amount of water that we got was crazy. And yes, I live on Denson. I got probably about 5-6 inches of water on the road in front of my house. In hours after that storm, that water was gone and ditch level. I mean, by the next day, the road was up, and there were still some areas in Benson that didn't come up immediately. But for flooding, I don't think anybody's house out there flooded. And look at what happened in the rest of Bonita. A lot of homes were flooded and neighborhoods were flooded. And our neighborhood drained out and was dry in a day, within 24 hours. Which I think is an amazing thing to say for our ditches and our flood system. So no matter what anybody says about it or what you see, during an emergency, it appeared to work pretty well.
I think it was 2 weekends in a row we had over 10 inches of rain.
Yeah,
We
it
had
was crazy the amount of rain we had prior to Irma.
You remember?
We had 200-year storm events within 3 weeks of each other.
And
All the rainfall was just rainfall on the surface.
yeah,
It was already saturated below the ground.
San Carlos Estates, we stayed dry, and I don't think anybody's house flooded.
I don't
The
think-
yards that were flooded.
I don't think there was one house that got
were
wet.
lower than the road.
Now, the Beach Road was a different story.
Yeah.
Your check is in the mail.
All right. If that's added to the agenda, we'll move on.
Okay,
Go ahead.
let me just add one thing.
Cool.
So it's true how there are ways from the water to get from the side streets into the canal, and that is true.
Yes.
But day-to-day rain, since we got about 10 inches, 8 inches in June, the water almost approached some of those, but since then, the water has never approached any of those, and all the water is coming towards, from what I can see, I've been down one of the streets, the water is going towards Strike, and all going down Strike, over into the filter ponds, and through that spillway. So all the water pretty much is controlled by that spillway, other than when you have a big event. That's my observation.
Yeah, they are designed to hold certain amounts of water, and then once it gets so high, it drains from there. From what my understanding is.
It's very difficult to get to the level where it goes right into the canal from the end of the street.
Yes. All right, we're gonna move on to old, new, and unfinished. Engineer fee negotiation and contract. Mr. Pringle?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. At the last board meeting, the board interviewed RMEC as a engineering firm to represent the district. And in particular, Mr. Edenfield was present on behalf of RMEC. At the end of the discussion, highlighting what occurred, at the end of the discussion, the board directed me to prepare a professional services agreement, a draft professional services agreement, and then directed Mr. Bradford, Supervisor Bradford, to meet with RMEC and I to discuss that agreement and work out the terms of that agreement. That meeting did occur. Well, first, I did prepare the agreement. I did circulate the agreement. Then the meeting did occur. And at that meeting, there were several points that were discussed. I made a few revisions to the agreement, and then that revised agreement is the one that I circulated to the board members for your consideration. At tonight's meeting, if it is the pleasure of the board to do so, you can proceed with entering into an agreement with RMEC. You can decide that you do not want to enter into an agreement with RMEC. You can, essentially at this point, you're not committed to make any decision in particular with regard to the selection of a new engineering firm to represent the district. I'm here to take your direction and do your bidding.
You met with him, what do you think? I see his fees, I guess, just looking at the budget real quick, it looks like he's more money projected for next year for engineering.
That didn't have anything to do.
That didn't have anything to do with
Didn't have
that.
anything to do with them.
All right.
The discussions that were done, it appears that he meets all the qualifications necessary for the board.
Yes.
And getting into small details is probably not.
I can do that if that's the desire.
That's what I was going to say, unless the board wants you to get into a lot of specifics, he meets all the qualifications that were required. And we had, the meeting lasted about 3 hours.
Yes, sir.
And we went through about everything that could be thought of with him. And he seems to have met all of the qualifications.
The agreement, Mr. Chairman,
Please.
the agreement contained an indemnification provision. It contained a provision that authorizes the termination by the district, by the Board of Supervisors upon a notice, which is a minimal amount of time without cause. That was one of the provisions that I like to include in agreements for professional services or for any independent contract with the district, so that if you decide you want to terminate an agreement, you have that authority. That was included. He did not did not object to that. There was indemnification language in there. He will be on the property. He will be performing services for you. He will be driving back and forth. Representatives will be driving back and forth to the district. And so I have an indemnification provision that I include in professional services and agreements, and he did agree to that indemnification provision. I also required him to carry insurance, and both liability and property casualty insurance. He agreed to those terms. Automobile liability insurance, he agreed to those terms, and will list the district as an additional insured. He will provide invoicing to the district for the services that he provides. There was a scope of services that was generally written for the agreement that describes the general scope of services. But if there are specific larger projects that are required to be performed, then there was also a provision in there that said that he would have to have the board's prior written approval before those larger projects were undertaken. Prior approval being granted at the board meeting. So you will have some authority and decision-making authority during his agreement for setting the work that he does perform. He will perform, or the engineering firm will also perform the engineering services that Mr. Morris and his firm currently provide with regard to reviewing permit applications and considering them, and also our permit compliance with Water Management District and with DEP that has to be done on a regular basis to make sure that we are in compliance with the permits that the district has with the other government agencies that oversee the control of the water that you perform. All of that was built into the contract. I tried to cover everything that I could in the agreement, and also give you the opportunity to terminate the agreement without cause if you deemed it appropriate. That's the overview. I will be glad to add anything to, or answer any questions, but that's the overview of the agreement.
How did we come upon? Was this one of your recommendations?
Put it out for bid.
Put it out for bids. We got a few bids in on.
No, that one.
Yes, sir. I
My only thing is, I don't know why, I mean, I don't know, I'm still hung up on the whole reason of why we're changing engineers. We've been with this firm since it's been set, since this whole thing went down. I know we had one little problem. My biggest thing is I can guarantee we're gonna spend a lot more money as a property owner out here. It's a new engineering firm to catch them up to speed of what's going on out here. That's my only concern. I don't know how it's really gonna benefit anyone, whatever. I kind of feel like it was, I'll take blame. I was on the board, Mr. Morris would do anything we tell him to do. Whatever the board tells him to do, he would do. So it's just like, if he was shortcoming, it was the fault of the board more than anything, Now, checking on his subcontractors and all that, that was a mistake, a one-time thing. I don't know. I want to be convinced why we're changing engineers. And it scares me, the learning curve of what. I mean, what was your feeling when you met? You think they can? It doesn't seem like they really did driving permits and all their stuff before. I don't know.
Pardon? I don't.
The new company that were this RMEC, did they ever do the whole driving permitting and all that? Did Morris the few takes care of and all that for us?
They met all the qualifications to do exactly the same job that he's doing.
Yeah,
And they have worked for the Southwest Florida Water Management out of West Palm Beach. So if his review is there, and with that, everything's in it that he said that he does. So I don't really see where the issue is with.
We went out to bid and we got one company bid.
Pardon?
We went out to bid and we got one company. Is the response?
Yes.
To include Morrison Mercure, did they not bid it?
They did
We
not bid it.
requested them to bid it too.
But they're on a case
We
by
asked
case.
Morris if you to rebid it too.
Yeah.
We got two bids.
He was requested to bid it. I'd asked him to do so.
So really, we don't have a choice.
We always have choices.
Yeah.
I know they're qualified and everything. It's just, it scares me to.
Well, and I think one of the issues too was in the original meeting where a lot of homeowners had an issue with the fact that, what came to light about the Superman and the fact checking of that is that how long has this been carrying on as to how much cost that has incurred to the community in the past as being not ever inspected or checked.
Yeah.
So I think it was just a build up to that. And plus the fact that when I was personally elected, a lot of the homeowners came to me and said, my roads are still flooding, they've been flooding, it's 20 years later, close, not 20 years, but 12 years, and nobody's given us an answer. The engineer hasn't come back to give a resolution. So I just, my opinion of the homeowners was that, sometimes it needs a fresh set of eyes. Also, what's been carried forward as miscellaneous expense we didn't need to have for past years, and coming into
Do you think it's
a
going to
light
be
that
cheaper or no? Do you think he'll be better at it?
Oh, you know what? It's not really about saying what. I'm not here to tell anybody that he was a bad engineer, okay? But I do happen to agree that sometimes complacency over long periods of time deserves to have a new look at what's going on. And I think that's a big reason for taking a look at or putting a new engineer in line is to have a new look and a new way of doing business for a while. It's not always about whether he was bad or not. I don't want to sit here and
that's my point.
Pick things apart.
He only did what we told him to do. It's like, it wasn't like he was.
Were you ever asked to check?
I have something I'd like to say.
name, please.
Okay, I was with Mr. Bradford when we went out and looked at all the culverts. Okay, everybody knows we took pictures, we did everything. One of the questions I brought up to him, and we are not the engineer. I'm not an engineer. I'm a property owner of several properties down here. But when you look at the culverts and the new culverts, I'm not talking culverts that were put in when the subdivision came. I'm talking brand new culverts. And when you see, if this is your ditch, here's where the culvert is supposed to be. Okay, he designed, an engineer designed, it's supposed to be so many inches, so many feet, so many this, okay? Are we all on board? I can take you out there and show you brand new culverts that's been put in. Here's your swell. Here's supposed to be the hole. We have culverts up here that are not, they're not down here to let the water flow. You can see them. I am not an engineer, but I as a person can look and see. Who's responsible for that? If their company's supposed to be coming out here and measuring from here to here and signing off, who's responsible? Because guess what? When it rains, go down those ditches and I guarantee you, you're gonna see this culvert here. There's no water here because it's backed up over here because that culvert is dug down where it's supposed to be. This culvert's not where it's supposed to be. That's the problem that we have in this community.
Water seeks its own level, and there's not one ditch out here that has two culverts the same. And I shouldn't say that specifically, but if you look at the ditch lines, you'll see that the bottom of the culvert pipes are either set on top of silt or they weren't put down to the same levels. Then we went with the new bigger diameter culvert pipes instead of digging down a little bit, which again, I'm not an engineer, but I do know something about water flow being in the fire department all the years that I've been, and I know you do. And when water seeks its own level and you see the bottom of some pipes that are up a couple inches higher, the water can't flow down that until it seeks that level. The thing I will say is that yes, when the water floods, the system is designed to flow over into the Imperial River, and it seems to do a very good job of doing that eventually. And the biggest problem you have in flooding on the roads, as well as, I still argue the point with the first three roads on my side, but when the trash and the garbage from the pipes or from the land, and this happens because this is where we need to have participation from our community, when they put leaves and limbs and things out for the trash people to pick up on Mondays, those leaves fall into the system. Then it rains, then they get washed down and they get clogging up the culverts. That there's nothing you can do about that, except bring a rake along and go clean it.
Or when they put it up Monday night after they just picked up Monday and let it sit for the next Monday.
Or go out and rake the edge of the ditch after it's been picked up and put it in a container. So participation of the people of our community can help change some things and help reduce the costs out here. My thing is, just like Tammy said, when you do go out and look at the ditches, the culverts are at different levels all along the ditch lines, and water seeks its own level. I don't have to have a transit to see that.
Well, I have a question too to Mr. Dupuy, or Morris Dupuy, is did we not initiate to revisit a bid because of lack of scope of work or because of budget?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So when we said that, in respect to what Ben is saying, like staying status quo, we gave you the opportunity to come to bid it. What was your reason for not bidding?
Candidly, I felt like I had was no longer wanted. That we had been. There were a number of things that were brought up as deficiencies, and the manner in which they were expressed to us in a very public fashion, where we had no opportunity to evaluate them prior to the meeting, or even understand that there was a problem that was perceived by anybody in a way that we could have responded was, to my opinion, distasteful. It's something that in 25 years as a practicing professional, I've never had happen to me before. Am I perfect? Is my firm perfect? No, ma'am. Mm-hmm. I would not sit here and presume to tell you that we are. However, we take a great deal of pride in what we do. The only thing that I have is my name, and I work very hard to maintain a performance for all of my clients that is respectful of the way that I want my firm to be viewed. If we fell down in this particular instance, then I take full responsibility for it. However, I did offer to make amends and take action to repair the problem. I was never afforded the ability to understand or review the materials that were part of the complaint after several requests to do so. And
But isn't it your firm's duty to go out and check that and follow up on their work? Because I mean,
We did.
as business
And we
owners
did.
and people that have had businesses, and you have the situation where you are bidded with the scope of work. I mean, again, I feel like it's a complacency issue. That I mean, I would have come to the table and made amends, rebid, explained, had my people go out, not wait for us to give the direction.
It was indicated to me that we would be able to receive and review the information that was provided during the board meeting.
Every
But was
pipe
it-
out there is still there today. You could have reviewed it the next day.
We did,
If
Mr.
I were
Bradford.
you- If I were you, I'd have brought my whole staff out and made a report to the board the following meeting.
Mr.
I
Bradford.
also remember that you had a very bad meeting, the meeting before that, as to where a person you brought to the board seemed to bash it pretty hard.
Well, the person who I brought to the board did so under a pretense that was not explained to me, or not explained in a way that that we were aware of what they were trying to do. We were of the understanding that they were coming out to explain what they were doing in the district, and it turned into a sales pitch for some sort of product that, as you will recall, I found was unendorsable. And I apologize to the board for that,
But
that particular
what I
instance.
remember is all of his water quality samples that he was displaying there, which indicated that the system we had in place was in terrible condition.
And as I indicated then, and I will reiterate now, the understanding that that individual had of that information was completely unfounded. It was presented in a way that does not represent the information, or does not represent anything about how the system works or what it does. And I attempted to explain that afterward and at the following meeting. And as I recall, you indicated that was a poorly received venture on my part.
I did. I will not dispute the things that I said.
So my point is that I attempted to set the record straight, but evidently that was not something that you were interested
I
in.
was one of 3 board members. I have a right to say what I'd like to do. There are 2 other board members that vote and control also.
Fair enough.
And my position that I feel is the community that we serve out here as a whole, and whether that's keeping you on or sending you packing.
Listen, you asked me why I didn't bother to resubmit a interest in this, and I've explained it. And now I'm having to defend my reason for having done it.
Well,
The truth of the matter is that we have a former board member sitting in the back, and 2 or 3 questions today she was able to answer. So I think there's a little bit of confusion of what's going on. There's also something to be said for history. Somebody who knows the community too. So I'm not exactly sure. Maybe I have a hard time believing that we have one services agreement to replace an engineer for a community. It's a little. I just thinking you should have a.
It's pretty much status quo for everything we do. Trust me, it's a pain.
It's kind of a. You want to have, it's kind of like an interview. You want your community to be better, or you want it to, to work out all right. You should be looking at 2, 3, whatever it is. But if we put out the bid and we only got 1,
Could I ask a question from a historical perspective, because I haven't been here that long? When were the roads put in? About 20 years ago?
15 years ago.
15 years ago, okay. And how long has the engineering firm been involved, or your father? 20 years at least?
We were retained by St. Carlos Estates in the year 2000.
Okay, so call 20 years. So your firm was involved with the water district prior to the roads going in and during the roads. So from an engineering perspective, was your firm involved at all in the basic layout of where the crown of the road is and how it's going to drain? Did you guys do all that surveying and take shots on each side street? The reason I'm asking that question is I would assume from an engineering perspective, there's some master engineering plan for those roads so that as each new permit comes in subsequent 15 years, you can say, okay, I look at some of these side roads and they're so long. I'm thinking, okay,
Sorry,
from that.
I'm still not sure about that.
I'm not either, that's why I'm asking. So what I'm thinking is, from an engineering perspective, if I was going to shoot a grade, I'd look at like halfway down the road, and I'd want the water to flow that end, and the other point flows, but maybe that's not the way it's laid out.
The answer is not.
So in
the
other words,
answer-
is there a master engineering plan for grade shots on all these roads prior to the new 15-year-old roads going in that you can then refer to now with permits for curb breaks basically coming in with the culverts?
The answer is yes in some places, no in other places.
Why is that?
The way that the district was, the capital improvements were ultimately installed, and the decision that was made by the board, primarily for cost considerations, was twofold. Strike Lane, at one point in time, prior to it being paved, was actually two roads on either side of a ditch. The capital improvement project consolidated the road into one roadway and two ditches.
Correct.
And the capacity that was originally in a ditch that sort of characteristically resembled the perimeter canal that was in the middle was split between those two ditches. They were designed to function differently in that they performed, a number of the ditches were actually repurposed from just being conveyance mechanisms into also providing water quality treatment for the runoff from the roadways.
Makes sense.
Those were requirements that the South Florida Water Management District demanded as a part of a violation that precipitated this whole
Strike Lane or all
the whole district. The district was cited by South Florida Water Management District for an illicit turbidity discharge into Spring Creek.
Understood.
The stabilization of the roadways by sodding all the swales, paving the roadways, etc., were parts of the cure to that, to abate the violation. So Strike Lane was principally redesigned and was constructed based on the new design. The north-south streets were more or less stabilized with a minimal amount of regrading in place, which is to say that the crown elevation on the north-south streets was largely not altered from the original, or at least the prevailing condition at the time.
Yeah.
The swales were created as a supporting mechanism to the roadways, but the irregularities that exist in the roadways were a byproduct of them not being completely rebuilt at the time.
The north and south roads.
Correct.
But there still should be grade shots for all the north and south roads, correct?
Generally speaking, there is a grading that is part of the design, but it's not a system like what Cape Coral uses, where they have a line grade established for every single roadside swale that they operate.
So that general grading of the north-south roads, how is that impacting current today permits for the swales and the plastic pipes going in? Because we must have 30 houses being built right now. And honestly, when I drive around, everyone looks different.
So at one point in time, the district was operating as the provider of the driveways, where the contractor worked directly for the district and built the driveways to the district specifications for the district. Prior to that period, that was about a 2 or 3 year period of time. Prior to that period of time, individual contractors would apply for permits and install culverts. We have returned to a system where the contractors have a qualification with St. Carlos Estates, but are privately procured by the particular homeowners or general contractors or whomever.
But again, my question ultimately goes back to if there's a master survey plan of grade shots, especially north and south roads, are those general contractors or homeowners or subs referencing that through the engineering firm to make sure when they put in a new plastic pipe culvert and the grading, it's matching some master plan?
And it's my understanding you're supposed to inspect them after they're installed by that said contractor.
Yeah. Once it's installed, you have to tear it all up because it's not to the grade.
Their job to determine that.
Yeah, I know that, but
Yeah.
my point I'm trying to make is, from an engineering perspective, if this is all mapped out beforehand in the last 15 years, we shouldn't have these problems.
I follow you.
With these flooding, one versus other, pipes here, pipes there, because they're following a master plan of engineering shots, basically.
So
grade shots.
the thing that I think has changed in St. Carlos Estates that is probably a larger contributor to some of the irregularities that you are referring to about which streets have more water on them and some that don't, is that when we originally designed St. Carlos, the capital improvement project, there was a characteristic of construction in St. Carlos Estates that you can see in homes that preceded that 2005-2006 era. Since the roads were paved, one of the unintended or unexpected consequences that we found was that much larger homes filling lots to a much greater extent, and having a significantly greater amount of impervious area than was originally expected has been taking place. The end result of that is we see a lot more runoff in certain areas where some more of the development has occurred than others. It's not homogeneous throughout the district, so the way that you see the runoff impacting the swales is not consistent. It's not a situation where you have a linear development where every single lot is designed exactly the same, every single house is within the a footprint that met the specific expectations of the design. You have large lots out here. They have the ability, and because of the value of the lots that has accrued over many years since the roads were paved, there are more valuable houses being constructed. That's the benefit. The downside is that there are probably certain areas where the system is reaching capacity, and there are certain things that may need to be reevaluated.
Like many people put retention ponds in the grounds to keep it there.
More storage providing places where there's more water storage tends to not be a negative, and that may be counterintuitive, but the lower lying areas that receive water were considered as part of the design. So every time a homeowner comes in and fills one of the wetlands, they are removing storage that the district historically relied on for some amount of stormwater accumulation.
So what coordination then with the engineering firm has been going on with the Army Corps of Engineers and the Florida DEP? Because I know for a fact that some of the lots back here that are an acre and a quarter, they're 100% wetlands. The rules now are you can't do more than 0.4%, 40% of that, and you got to pay into the credits, $99 credit, et cetera, et cetera. So what coordination of the engineering firm is going on to ensure that the district is not getting inundated, especially certain areas that are naturally low lying?
So St. Carlos Estates has never had authority to regulate anything over the lots themselves. And in the execution of their rules, DEP, South Florida Water Management District, etc., is supposed to enforce what is called a historic basin storage criteria for their permits. Whether they are doing that with the individual homes that are being constructed, I do not know.
I think this board only does 16 feet on either side of the road, and that's it. There's nothing else.
But unfortunately, the 16 feet on the side of the road is getting impacted now
Oh, definitely.
by the water runoff. So
Definitely.
maybe one of the items of the agenda is the board needs to start going back to the DEP and Army Corps of Engineers and the South Water District. Say, hey guys, we're in the middle of this big flood shed coming down from Okeechobee on.
And why can't some of these be using their credits when they're buying this
Yeah,
land? Why can't they buy this
to
land
help operate and keep this clean?
off of Rocky and all that stuff?
Yeah.
It's just,
Just a suggestion.
Yeah.
Again, I'm looking at the engineering firm because you've got the statistics and the analysis of the data to then support the board making these requests or making these arguments, and then the law firm puts out a notice to Army Corps, DEP, and plus all the communities surrounding the district that they're flowing into. Because I've actually gone around the perimeter and I see a lot of concrete culverts and pipe coming from, whether it's preferred concrete across the street, those developments, and like, where's all this water coming from? It's impacting us.
There are certain developments around St. Carlos Estates that were afforded an ability to use the perimeter canals. The Brooks has been paying for the privilege of being able to utilize the district's conveyances as a part of their outfall for 20 years now, I think. Or
So one of those communities pays.
just one.
Well, then there's a precedent that's been set that one's paying, they should all start paying.
There have been others that were attempting to use St. Carlos's canals over the years, including but not limited to, FDOT and some other properties that are on the east side of I-75. We have been, to this point, successful in keeping those particular entities from being able to connect to St. Carlos Estates.
Are you talking about the east side of I-75
Yes.
and not the ponds between?
The ones that are in St. Carlos Estates are part of St. Carlos Estates. The county, when the county built the Imperial Road Parkway extension and condemned the properties through St. Carlos, they in essence became part of St. Carlos Estates. However, there were efforts at the time to try to have them continue to pay the assessments that would have been paid by those property owners for which they absorbed the properties that they took by eminent domain, that I believe were deemed legally unfeasible.
But all that water on the east side of Livingston drains into our system. And if you look at the east side of what's called the ditch canal that is between Strike Lane and on the south side, and you go out toward I-75, you can see the heavy turbidity in that, which is so milky and white, and you can see the oil sheens on top of it, and that is all coming from the Livingston area.
I-75 does not drain into
I
St.
didn't
Carlos
say
Estates.
I-75,
But
I said from I-75 this direction.
Yes,
which
and
includes the property on the east side of Livingston.
But it's important to also recognize that the county also built the ponds that portion, that their road drains into before it discharges into St. Carlos Estates. If there is some sort of illicit discharge that is coming from the county's facilities, the county needs to be informed of that is happening. They have the means to correct it. They have the responsibility to correct it. The county is a co-permittee, is a part of the MS4 permit with San Carlos Estates. They share an obligation in order to prevent illicit discharges from being put into the system.
Yeah, my question really comes back to this, is that this isn't the first year I've been watching that canal system personally, for not just this year, but the years prior to that, when you clarify that. And we had the same problem last year that we have this year. By the time it actually reaches out beyond where the where they have all the plants and stuff. They're corner of Strike Lane, the Strike Lane and Stillwell, where that canal comes out into the Stillwell Canal. By the time it reaches down there, it's fairly clear. But all that settlement is going down and settling in our canals, whether it's oil, whether it's whatever it is coming off of the roadway, it's settling in our canal system. And it's been doing that for several years. And this is one of the reasons that your company's been in charge of doing the test. I realize if you're testing out, that's one thing. But if you're looking at what's coming off the road, why has that not been brought to the board as an issue as to the quality of the water that the county is discharging into our community?
Because the testing that we have done has not shown that there is any illicit discharge.
Anybody who drives down there can see it. It doesn't require a test to say, hey, this is heavy turbidity, and before when our roads were dirt, you can see it in every one of our canal systems. I am pointing a finger, but I'm just saying, why is it that things like this, if you're in charge of it, why aren't you bringing it before the board last year or however many years it might have been going on? When we get the settlement in our canal system, eventually the people who have to pay to clean those is the people that are sitting here tonight and the people who live in our community. And whether it's short-term or long-term, we all own these canal systems that we're responsible for. And I see it as a deficit to the community if we're not taking care of it, and that we have it at some point earlier, send a letter to the county saying you need to clean this up. Whether you simply drop the old sponge things down like the fire departments use when we have an oil spill, they should be doing something to keep that from coming in.
If there was an illicit discharge being conveyed into the system, we were not aware of it. We have not seen it in order to be able to report it. I can assure you that where we have seen these things occurring and have been able to document them, we have taken issue with it. We have had the county take enforcement action against the concrete plant and a number of other entities in and around the district over a period of years, where as we've been aware of these things, they have been resolved. I don't know what to tell you except that I can only fix what I know is broken.
Do we sample the incoming water from these external spots?
We have been doing a certain amount of water quality testing over the past year plus that the DEP has mandated as a part of our permit in order to establish some runoff parameters for our MS4 permit. The normal water quality testing is done at a couple of different locations. It is a much more modest regime.
Right, but the question is, we're responsible for the water leaving our district, and we test that, we sure we're in compliance. But if we're just waiting for that to fail and then go upstream and see, that's because somebody else, that's not very proactive.
We test we test to an extent that we are required to test, and that is done with the county as a part of the MS4 program.
But required for our compliance, but I think what the question here is there another interest that we have that we can decide where to test and when to test to protect our canals?
Yes, we can certainly expand or, to a degree, contract the monitoring program to be as sensitive and as widespread as you are willing, the district is willing to commit to. It is not, there is a minimum, but there is certainly no maximum. And it's a matter of how much resources the district wants to put into that particular effort as to whether or not you feel it's worth your while.
Yes, that's where I'm saying it all falls back on the board here.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, it is what it is. You know, I mean, to be honest with you, I've been on the board 7 years. This is the first year ever I've ever seen more than 3 people in the ground. I mean,
Well,
you
but
know, so
he
you
was
try to do the
appointed
best and try to save money, and it's. But now, I mean, you think that the way you're enforcing, you think this new company is, you're going to ride them hard, and you're going to be proactive, and you're going to, you know, where, I mean, I don't know. I just don't know. I hope we can save money. Or with
What
this
is the
new
difference in fees? Because we have their fees. What is the difference from the past fees? First question. Second question would be, Ms. Finazzo made a comment that the roads are flooding, but we just heard Mr. Bradford in the back said during Irma, 200-year storms, within 2 days it was empty. So which one is it?
Well,
Is it flooding?
we're talking about three
Oh, no.
specific. There was 3 specific roads, and I still get emails and I get videos of individual homeowners that came to that meeting specifically last year, wanting resolution as to why their road is continuing to
Road or
flood.
ditch? Road or ditch?
Road.
The people who live on Catskill, Papillion, and including Pinson, which I live on, and my younger brother, who spoke a few minutes ago, happens to live on. He doesn't live down as far as I live, and I happen to live beyond where the road dips down and begins to come back up. So we do see water a little bit longer than he might see it.
And I don't disagree with that, but back to Mr. Depew's comment and yours, they built the roads based on what it was, not to bring them up to standard, to put them where they were and pave it. So again, not being their fault, they're only dealt the hand that they were given.
Yeah, under direction of the board.
Correct.
You know? And again, back then there was no public input. Everyone was just doing the best they could do. And I don't know, there's value to that history that we just heard for the last 20 minutes.
That's why I asked the question.
That's my thing. I just don't want to just hire this firm they could be more than qualified. That's great, but it's like, there's a lot of catching up to do.
Mr. Edfield is a longtime friend of my family's. I can vouch for his integrity and his ability as a professional engineer. I have no hesitation to tell you that he can perform the job. He does not have the history with the system that I do. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I will leave that up to your judgment.
Enfield is RMAC?
Yes. But I appreciate that there is a sense of things that I should have been doing. And I am not one to point at certain reasons, but I think Mr. Bogatz's comment about we have executed the things that we have been asked to execute is probably the most succinct response that I can offer. If you can go back and find where I was directed by the board to go and study a particular issue related to the concerns that were expressed by residents, and I failed to do that, then I will completely own that responsibility. I am aware of maybe 2 particular instances where we were asked by the board to spend resources on researching a particular problem. One of them was on Busy Bee. On a couple of different occasions, there were some concerns expressed about why a particular wetland was filling up with water over a period of time. We spent time going through discussions with South Florida Water Management District on that particular item.
Now, just in respect to Mr. John's comments, in the 22 years since I'm new to this board and the whole process of it, you being the engineer for 22 years, have you ever suggested or made an initiative or direction for the grants that are out there for these things that we could do with the outlying communities? Because it's my understanding that the Brooks electively pays it. They don't really, I did hear in one meeting that we're just not, like just let them leave it status quo because they're paying it, but they don't have to pay it. It was my understanding. But I'm just wondering, in the 22 years you've had the community, have you suggested, initiated, done anything to give this board, there were board members on for a very long period of time and there's been new ones, we don't always know. But we look to you as the expert for those initiatives, grants, suggestions, ideas, things to help offset costs and add to contingency funds and things like that to our budget.
I can assure you without hesitation that in the 12 years that I have been participating in this particular role, and my father was the one who was doing this before me, but in the 12 years that I have been involved with it, every month I have had detailed conversations with the board about various things that we can do differently, do better. Are they?
Because the guy that came that did the filtration systems, was that brought in by you?
Again,
as a suggestive, and
I brought him
that
in
kind of
thinking
blew up.
I brought him in thinking that he was going to come talk to you about maintenance that he does and exactly the activities that he actually performs. That was what we were thought that he was going to present. What he ended up presenting was as far away from that as I could have dreamed. It was not what was anticipated at all. And I believe it's on the record. I apologize for me having promoted him coming to that meeting. That was absolutely not what was.
But did he not discuss water quality and his opinion of the quality of the water in our canal system?
I would say he thought that he was discussing water quality, but he does not understand water quality, in spite of the fact that he is selling things that are intended to remedy water quality. We did a brief review of the things that he had presented and found absolutely no value to them, no documented performance data, no information that someone could have actually relied upon to have substantiated their performance. The way that I will try to make this comment again, the way that it was presented was absolutely not what we had understood was intended to be part of his presentation to the board.
And then the last question is, like with Sweeperman, we've been paying him, the bill was $12,000, is it per year?
No, that was about
9,000.
$9,000 per year?
No, that was just this year.
Just this year. So what is it as an annual budget?
It's
It
part of the
varies
drainage.
from
He was
year
in
to
the
year.
maintenance.
It's based on whatever the
So can you firmly say that other than this past bill that was presented and Mr. Bradford bringing the slides of probably 100 plus culverts maybe, I don't know the exact amount, you had 300 and some photos, can you attest that the years past that your firm has diligently went out there and inspected and we weren't just spending erroneous money? And that looking at you being at the helm for 15 years times 9,000 per se projected, that those past years it was always something that was validated, and you can firmly say your firm, your company, your people went out and, that was my concern, is like if it's you've been at the helm for 15 years, this year we went out there and there was a significant amount, and I agree, your apology, what you did, I appreciate that, but that was my concern, is how many years have we been paying? 9,000 times 9 years is, almost $100,000, and if it was never inspected.
We were also charged for hundreds of feet of culvert that
wasn't there. So that's just concerning that, yes, we may have to spend a little bit money on the proposal. We requested you to also bring up to bid and state your case, your case to all this. So
And-
these are questions and concerns. I don't know if you were at all these past meetings, but those were costs and expenses that, we cannot recoup if they were never diligently monitored or managed by his firm.
And the other thing being, Bill, I did ask you, and you told me that the numbers that he got for per foot of culvert pipe were numbers that were given to him, not things he measured.
They are numbers that we scaled off of aerial photographs as a mean. We did not go out and measure every single culvert.
I did.
Eh,
I'm just saying.
Fine.
So the
Okay.
fact that we did bill at $3 a foot for pipe that doesn't exist, that bothers me.
This was the way that we have been handling the program for a considerable amount of time.
I think that was the point.
And that's fine. If you're unhappy with that, then you're perfectly
I'm really
entitled to be
unhappy
that way.
with it.
However, we got the culvert links based on rectified aerial photographs that were within. They are a 6-inch resolution graphic, so that we can go and look at those culverts to a plus or minus half foot dimension. That was the way that we had procured the different pipe links and their locations originally. So, can there be errors? Yes. Can there be discrepancies? It is probably going to be over the entire district a plus or minus factor.
Is that standard in the industry?
It's not an uncommon method for picking up things that you can that are linear in nature and have distinctive markings that you can recognize. It's something that we do on a number of different things in order to estimate quantities. And that's all we were doing, was estimating a quantity for a particular proposal.
Well, seems how every pipe has to be permitted in your office, as many years as they've been doing it, has the permit for every pipe. It seems to me that you would have the exact measurements in your office. And it's just sad that the 1 year that I go out and check behind you when nobody else did, and not just find that none of the culvert pipes have been, and I will say, none.
No,
have been cleaned.
that's not correct.
It is correct, and I still got the video. That's why I didn't turn it over. You had the right to go look behind it. The only pipes that were cleaned were the new ones. And I said that when I put up the video on the screen. The only pipes that were cleaned were the new ones. And those didn't get cleaned, they were cleaned. So that's not incorrect.
Look,
And it would be the same.
it sounds like my original assessment of the situation was correct, and that this conversation for the past 45 minutes or so has been a waste of your time.
Okay.
Wow.
That's it? Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I've asked my questions pointedly about just historically to understand, to get that
Judy,
confirmation.
Jennifer asked a question about the other communities and attempts by Bill Morris, but I know that the board in prior years had attempted to get funding from the other communities around the district for the water flows coming in and was unsuccessful in their attempts. Do you have any recollection of those actions?
I remember when Chauncey was on the board, he had some communication with the Gulf Coast community that was there at the time. And I know it was looked into and there was an effort made and it just didn't get anywhere. But there's no other place that I know of that discharges water that, unless you're thinking of like the cement factory, I know we had to go around with them. And
Well,
we-
every community around us, all the way around our canal system, discharges into our canal system. Whether it's through the estuaries to the south of us that belong to Bonita Springs, that runoff goes into our system. It doesn't go somewhere else. So, and then the communities on each side of them have some runoff into those estuaries. So the south to us does that. The community to the east of us has all their discharge into us by, I believe, at least 3 large culvert pipes. Then we have the Livingston Road that has some discharge into it, as identified a few minutes ago, with the turbidity in that ditch system that we have on the south side of Strike Lane. Then coming under Livingston, the water's absolutely clear today, but there are days that water has been really nasty coming through there, whatever it's got in it. But that comes from the ponds to the east side of Livingston all the way up toward I-75, not to extend beyond I-75 as Bill had said earlier. Then to the north side of us, we have not Brooks, but the community on the east side of Livingston that has some runoff, not absolutely certain where that's going. Then you come around by the railroad track to the west side of our community, and we have everything from the railroad track back from the railroad track to Strike Lane. That whole length along there runs off from the railroad and has the ability to get into our system. So we do have runoff all the way around.
I didn't say that. I said, she asked me if I recalled any effort to go after anyone to get some funds from any other area. And I said, that's what I recalled. I recalled an effort being made back some years ago with the golf course community. There may have been other efforts made at different times that I don't remember right before my time, but as far as all the communities, some of which are new in very recent years. But she asked what I recalled, and I told her what I recalled.
My apologies.
Thank you.
I have made numerous calls to the city of Bonita Springs, speaking with the city manager. I've called the county. I've called people with the Southwest Water Management District in West Palm. I've spoke with numerous other agencies up in Tallahassee, and everybody says, we're not going to give you any money, okay? So I can tell you that nobody has any interest in just merely offering it up. And we may be able to get something, but we're going to have to go after it a little differently. And there are grants that are available, but we have to have matching money to get that.
Can I just make one more comment, because obviously there are other things to do. Regardless of this engineering firm or another, when you read the statute, you read the water plan, the board makes a decision, they direct the engineering firm to do what they believe is necessary. I'm going to make a suggestion that the only way you're going to probably get money from all the surrounding communities here will be to have documented evidence of what that water flow, the quality of it coming in. So whether it's this engineering firm or another one, probably have some kind of monitoring program for the inflows, not just the outflows. So over a period of time, you say, hey, after a big rainstorm, we monitored a lot more oil slicks coming in and this and that from your community. So, hey, guys, here's some evidence. And what do you want to do about it? Because right now, we're just all talking.
Yeah.
And you have nothing to demonstrate to somebody outside the district that they're potentially impacting the district without some engineering documented evidence. Whether this engineering firm does or another one, I think that's something the board should consider as an agenda item in the future.
Thank you.
And as for this, do you want to make a motion, or it's up to you? We'll put it out to vote. You guys, whatever you think.
I make a motion that we go with Evan too.
And I second that.
Second. All right. And that passes.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, if I may, that motion was to approve the agreement with RMEC and to authorize the signature of the agreement. That
It was.
That was the intent. Okay.
Seconded by Jennifer.
All right.
All right. Now we can move on to.
Did we have a call for the vote?
I'm sorry.
Call for the vote?
Call. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Me.
So by that action, you approve the agreement with RMEC and authorize the chair to sign the agreement. I'll circulate the agreement and get it signed. There will be a transition time. Mr. Edenfield discussed previously where RMEC will talk with Mr. Morris and Morris Depew to transition the engineering services and all the hard files and everything else that Morris Depew stores and handles for the district. So there will be a process that will come next for that transition to occur. And I'll let RMAC know the decision of the board.
8991 Strike Lane. Mr. Pringle, you had something to say?
The property owner, I believe, is here. I was contacted earlier by the attorney for the property owner. It's my recollection that some meetings ago, property owner approached the district about modifying the entrance gate to his property that lies within the right-of-way easement of the district. And one of the requests that I recall, one of the specific requests, as I remember, there were two. One was for approval of a new entranceway. The other was for an easement along the east 5 feet of the district's right-of-way for underground utilities to be installed. There was documentation that was submitted to the engineer for the engineer's review in the normal course of the engineer services, and that was related to the entranceway. I don't know what has happened with the underground utility easement with the request. I think there was maybe some FPL involvement, but I'm not aware of any approvals the district has granted for either the entranceway or for the underground utility easement. And I don't know what has already been installed without district permission within the district's right of way.
Would you like to hear from me?
Please, yes.
I have a letter from Mr. DePiel and the board for the gate approval, which I had to have before I went to get my permit. My gate's been permitted, it's been closed, everything was done the way we were going to do it. We had discussed in several meetings I came to about doing the underground. I think this young lady here was on the board at the time. And it was actually Jim over here that said, yes, I would prefer going underground. Okay. And this time, I will call FPNL. It will take me literally 2 months to get an answer from them. So keep that in mind every time I get an answer from FPNL. We were at the point where we had got the approval. I sent the engineer here the plans. They came back to me and said they didn't want the underground pools, which would be on the easement. We were going to put our house 2,000 feet back, which would have been all the way to the barn. So we would need several poles. It's just a little, concrete cap. I said, okay, fine. Went back to the engineer, my engineer, which talked to him, I think, a couple of weeks ago. And I forget your name. I'm sorry.
Mr. Morris.
No. And so we went back, put our house at 450 feet. And, when I got back to me before I did that, I said we go 450 feet without a pool. So the only thing that was really backing up the whole easement thing, which was, Jim over here wanted underground, which I did too, and because they were going to want to go, they were going to go over there. So I was willing to pay extra over there. To make a long story short, I sent the FPNL sent me a drawing. I would send it to Bill, and it wasn't good enough. So I called FPNL, wait another 2 months, get another drawing. It wasn't good enough. That's when we got the letter from you that wasn't being handled. But what we do, and then in between that time, we moved the house 450 feet up. Now, I had gotten an email, I have to go on emails, that says that we need as-bills. To me, as a general contractor, as-bills is when the job's done. That's what an as-built is. So I had contacted a company to drill underground. It was 5 months out. I talked to you about that. And so what happened, they came out on a Friday, I got a letter from you saying we're not supposed to start that same exact day, because
came to your house, I met you on the street. So
Actually, I
got that.
Actually, I saw them down there starting doing the
Yeah,
work.
they called me up.
And I stopped there. I called Stephen up at Morris Depew. He said that everything was in order. I believe he spoke with Bill that day. It was a Friday morning. And then later on, find out, or was told, that the permitting wasn't in place, but the only thing that was out of place on the day that you had all that equipment sitting there, and I talked to you later that morning, and was that the 48-hour notice had not been provided.
You shook my hands and I gave it to you.
And I turned,
I think it's your brother's house.
but nobody gave that to me. But the thing was, there was no 48-hour notice.
No, there wasn't.
Now, personally, as far as I could tell, there's no reason to hold up your project for the failure of a 48-hour notice if everything else is in place.
What I was trying to explain to you is I had called that company, it took me 4 months to get them out there to drill in the ground. And they just happened, I didn't know FPL was gonna take all this time to build a plan. And then I hired Asheville to get hold of you, and all he did was send just, as-built of our plan of my house. And then just drew on the easement on there, and you told him it was fine. And then I got an email here saying that you had any more questions.
Initially, what we received 2 or 3 times was a schematic that FP&L had provided that had no relative location for the particular improvements relative to any sort of property line, easement line, anything. It was a line on a piece of paper that indicated a wiring specification and a length. And that was what we were being asked to approve initially.
And what you guys approved originally was the same plan that they gave me 3-4 different times. But you gotta remember, it takes almost 2 months to get one of these little plans from FPL. Just to talk to them. The first one they said, my house is gonna get 1,000 feet down, was the same exact one as the last 3 I sent you. And you were able to get it out of that. But all it showed was the pools. And then the third plan I sent you, I'm not here to, the story is, we finally got Ashmore together with you. We showed you where our house is gonna be, where the power was gonna come across to the house. We put a pad there for a transformer, and that was fine. That's what I was told last, now, because the lawyer was saying that nothing has been done, but it has been.
Nothing has been done with regard to a recording of an easement in your favor across the property.
Understood. I know I'm here to go over that whole thing again, so I just want to let you know how this whole thing is all resolved. Okay? And I was under the understanding it was approved, except I couldn't have pools there. And so it was approved 1,000 feet back without no pools, but I brought it back 400 feet where I wouldn't have no pools. And then, there's another $8,000 in engineering and architectural fees and all that, because then you do all your drainage and all that stuff twice.
So where are we at?
Well, I don't know.
This is like, when I was came out to drill the hole and ran the line, and then I stopped it there. So we've got the sleeve there, and that's it.
What engineering stuff has been presented to the board and approved?
Nothing has been approved.
Okay.
Here you guys step up with, but you can say right now that you don't want to approve it, and that's what I've come here prepared to understand. I don't know why when it was approved a year and a half ago, I did everything except for asking for permission for that final 48 hours. But I gave you my personal phone number.
It's not about that. I don't have any I can't, by one member board, approve anything or disapprove anything.
I understand that.
What has to happen is we have a standard procedure for you presenting plans and things to the board to get anything constructed, and the board has to approve the construction of it on the Water Management District's property, and that wasn't done.
It was done 3 times, it just wasn't approved. You guys
But-
said you wanted it back to 400 feet instead of, you guys didn't want no pools.
Okay.
We didn't know. What we indicated was that poles should not be installed in the
The
easement.
easement, yes.
Whether you used them or didn't use them or redesigned everything around because you didn't want to put these on your side of the easement was your decision.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So what we did is we brought the house 450 feet back up front, we don't have to use them. There's a sleeve underground, and when the guy went to drill the sleeve, he did get off the track that 5 feet, and I'm prepared to eat that. I'm actually prepared to just, you know, if you guys say we can't do it, then so be it. You know, I just don't understand why it has to be such a hassle. I understand.
It was my understanding to get it out of the right of way as quick as possible and then be on his own private property and go wherever he wanted to go, correct?
I didn't hear you.
That was the biggest hang. Was just the route it was taking, basically. Because I guess the original, they wanted to parallel the canal, and it would be all in our right of way in case for future improvements or anything we had to do. This electric line's in the ground.
I think what we had understood that the board had signed off on was that the easement could be used, 5 feet of the eastern side of the easement could be used for the installation of the conduit. When we specified, in that spirit, we specified that the pull boxes, which have an above ground or an access to be opened from the surface, and also have the potential, if we were to ever do maintenance in that section of the canal to get damaged, that should be installed outside of the district's right-of-way so that we would not be responsible for damaging them.
Okay.
That was the sole motivation for that particular recommendation.
Now, since then, the house has moved.
Since then, he has indicated...
Or move it forward, so we don't have to put the poles, because the poles have to go after 500 feet. You would have, every 500 feet, you need a pole.
Okay.
The house is gonna be 1,000, 1,500, I don't remember what, it was gonna be back to the ways. So what we did is we moved the house up before we would require any poles. So when they came out and they dug, they went from the pole 3 feet down through the right of way to the easement, 3 feet down, 400 feet back. The pipe's sticking up right now. If we get permission, it's going to take it across the street, 4 feet down, 3 feet down, and put a pad on the other side. It'll be right next to my garage, which will have a transformer on it, and we'll go underground to that to my meter.
What do we need
So
to do?
right now, we're talking about the conduit. What happened to the engineering studies and things for the fence itself? And surveys or anything that would have allowed that to, I mean, I know he came before the board and asked permission to put it there, but I thought he had a process to go through to put it there. Wasn't there anything required for the fence to get put there?
No, city county. You guys had to give me a letter, take to the county, and I took that to the county with my permit.
Who gave you the letter, Bill?
The fence was installed, or at least to our understanding, the fence was being installed on his property, which is characteristically no different than anywhere else in the district where a property owner has requested to install a fence.
That's what I thought.
We have not objected to anybody installing a fence on their property.
The fence.
Okay, but it's on the Water Management District's property.
And it showed that on the plan that you guys got.
Personally, I've never seen your
Well,
plan.
I don't remember that.
So that never came before the board.
Yeah, the board approved the plan. She was here.
That was
She
the
said
board.
the plan.
Do you remember?
The only thing I remember is when he came to board with his attorney, the fence was a separate issue. That was all, you guys worked all that out between the engineer and the attorney, and that was fine. But I do recall, as far as the underground went, the board approved it, subject to the paperwork that he was going to submit coming to our engineer so that our attorney could record it. And that was the holdup. But I remember we said, yes, we approve it, subject to getting this. So it wasn't.
And I would get FNL to give it to me.
Right.
And that wasn't good enough. They didn't give it to me, so it was 2
And
months at a time.
I remember the holdup came from FPL. But I recall that we didn't get that final paperwork, so although we had approved it subject to that. And that's what I remember, and that's why Mr. Pringle said that he hadn't recorded anything because it hadn't come, and Bill, you had gotten something, but it wasn't right, it wasn't what you needed.
It was
So it was all, FPL was terrible.
It was the schematic from FPNL that we had received for that portion of it. We issued a letter indicating to City of Bonita Springs, we did not object to their installing a fence or wall or whatever on their property.
On their property.
Right.
The plans I showed you guys when we came to the meeting showed it on the easement. All the way way over to the side, and it showed a 10-foot gate there. On the plan that you looked at and approved.
With all due respect, I've never seen that, so I can't answer.
I'm sure we can come up with that through the lawyers, because it's all been documented.
Go ahead. I have not seen any of that information.
Well,
So
I
maybe
can't
Mr.
recall.
Young-
I don't know.
Maybe Mr. Young.
I don't remember anything but a gate or fence with that. I don't know.
I don't recall ever seeing any sort of improvements installed in the right of way itself. But you can be assured that we will be checking our file when I get to the office.
Thank you.
and we'll check ours. We'll get you guys a property. I wouldn't have spent
We can't take
$35,000.
I don't know what the heck's going on
Take any
here.
action
Because I don't remember anything about a fence. That I do remember exactly what Judy had said. It was on just to make sure everything was going to be legit.
But I have not and would not just arbitrarily approve
I
some
don't
kind
right
of
away. I don't
improvement
see you
in
ever-
the right of way.
I don't believe
It was brought up, and the prior owner had a fence from one end of the property to the other end of the property, the same place I had it. And that's the same place we put it. And it was brought up at the meeting.
Just put this on.
So
I would
Mr.
have to
Chairman,
say our motion from the last meeting should stand.
yes, sir. I don't believe you have sufficient information in front of you to make a decision on granting any approvals
Okay.
at this time.
Yeah, that's fine. I know the lawyers got it.
Yes. Okay.
That whole fence bill was a long deal too.
Yes. And so it would be
Actually, on one end of the property, we had lowered the wall down to 6'8" because of that was somebody's.
So I would say, Mr. Chairman, that it would be appropriate to entertain a motion to continue this item to the next board meeting.
Motion made.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll get you what you need. You don't, he's got COVID right now.
I called him today and was not available.
There's 3 items on the agenda we're going to strike here: the manager selection, the secretary treasurer selection, and the sewer viewer proposal, because those aren't ready yet. But we can move on to the Bank of America State Credit Card Program.
Okay. If you recall, in the auditor's comments, they were not happy with the manner in which we were handling reimbursements for funds that had to be expended in advance of meetings,
Yes.
and suggested the use of a credit card. And Bank of America provided us with the state program credit card documentation that I gave you, Ben, way back. And so I printed that out, brought it forward so that we would get it approved and get it started, so that at least it would show the auditor that we are making motions to honor their request to tighten up that
Fulfill
area.
Right.
Okay. Does that need a motion or anything?
There are a number of, there were, remember I said, when you change auditors, the first year you are going to have a number of management letter comments. This is one of those management letter comments that Ms. Lawson is trying to get resolved. The website compliance is another one.
Okay.
So yes, sir. So we're working through that. Do you need any action, official action?
They had to sign the thing, so I don't know if the board has to approve the application to participate in the program.
Yes, ma'am. So yes, sir, you do need board action to approve participation in
It's
the
called
Bank
State of
of
Florida.
America
It's the State of Florida Purchasing Card Program.
purchasing
Motion
card.
made to approve the Bank of America State Credit Card Program.
Approved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Did you second?
Yes.
Stand up, my back is killing me. All right. 2022-2023 budget
So then the
discussion.
table this, do you
Fun.
approve it, so then table that? You come back with Okay. How do you want to
Chris,
begin?
is there
How do you want to
anything you
begin?
want us to add, or-
Okay. So, if everybody in the audience, if you're interested, and the board, let's look at the big sheet. Let's look at the legal size sheet of piece of paper. Because this has all the information relative to what we're talking about. The other sheets that you have in the packet represent, this is how the budget used to be handled in the past and what it would look like. So I passed that out so that there would be some familiarity in if you had participated in prior discussions with the board. This is what it used to look like. The auditor, as part of the audit program, wanted us to have a document that reflected the funds balance, carry forward, and ending. So we were evolving to this form of a budget with the budget. Okay, so this is what you're used to in the past. This is the new budget presentation, and what will be attached to the budget resolution. In addition to the package, just because I gave you lots of information, I gave you the loan amortization for the CIP Phase 1 that shows our loan balance is at $830,767.80. I give it to you as a reference so when we go to talk about the assessment for Phase 1, you have an understanding of what the payment program and the payment requirements are. Then I also gave you last year's budget as it was previously prepared, as well as basically the document that kind of matched up with what the auditors had. The last document in the packet is a current income and expense sheet from October 1st to August, which represents the bills that were signed here today, so that you have an understanding of what has actually been expended out of the budget, what we have received into the budget, and what has been expended out and where it has gone. So those are just really reference materials for you to look at and maybe provide some information because if you're not familiar. So if you look at the legal size piece of paper, how we approached this year's budget planning was to take a look at the last 5 years and get an average. What did we spend over the last 5 years in each of the major categories, right? To give us an idea of where we've been and what we've been spending, because every year is a little different. One year we had a project that cost $28,500 to clean out the canals. Another year this year for instance, we had 3 culverts that had to be repaired. That was another, I don't know how much it was, $15,000 to $19,000. So every year there's some project that comes up that we haven't planned for. And that's why there's some variations in the budget from one year to another year in terms of the different categories. All right? So the approach this year was, let's see what our average over the last 5 years has been and how we've spent the money and where has it gone, to get an idea, relative idea of what it costs to run the district. And then I showed you, so we have that 5-year average. We have this year's budget, which is the top line, which I also brought back underneath so that we have it as a comparison for your eyes to compare against the 5-year average. And then we have the suggested budget for next year. Now, in the suggested budget for next year, there are some items that have been added to that budget to account for projects that have been discussed during the course of this year to date, that has been a matter of ongoing discussion. One of those topics of ongoing discussion has been the cost of the perimeter roads maintenance and cleanup. What would it cost to keep those perimeter roads maintained so that people can walk on them? I had one number in there, and in talking with Jim, he wanted that number changed, partly because, one, I didn't really have anything to back it up, which is the actual cleanup, but I did have a number from Tony that said $22,000 for his schedule of maintenance. Jim said he had gotten an estimate of $18,000 to maintain the perimeter roads, to for a walking comfort level.
But how does spending an additional $20,000 in our budget have anything to do with the control or the status quo of the water? When the roads have been maintained as they are for the last 15 years without spending an extra $20,000 in our budget?
Okay, let me get through everything that's in here, and then we can have maybe a question and answer period, because that's really for the board to answer, because that's the project that has been discussed. Okay, so let's just go through what all the numbers represent and where they came from. So if you look at the notes in the administration budget, the administration budget is the budget of the secretary, the treasurer, the manager, the supervisor's salary, and the taxes that are related to those items. So the board has talked about separating the manager position from the secretary treasurer position. And even though we have not really, you haven't put it out for bid, or you haven't discussed or found a manager. I originally had come up with a number of 36,000. Jim felt that 48,000 would be a more reasonable number to expect for that position, and then the secretary treasurer at 24,000, and then $1,800 is the supervisors and the related taxes. The auditor line is based on the contract that was signed last year. So this year the auditor was $13,000 in the contract that was signed last year. For 2023, for year number 2, the auditor's cost is going to be $13,500. The CIP Phase 1 program represents the current amortization figures provided in 21 plus $100,000 additional paydown. If you were not aware, since about 2016, 2017, and I had to go back and look at that, so I may be wrong on my year. At some point, the board decided not to change the level of assessment for the CIP Phase 1 so that it could pay off the loan sooner than was needed. So every year we were paying an additional pay down. This year we paid down $95,000, which is why we are now at the $830,000 level. So in looking at next year, we have to make sure that we bring in enough revenue to meet the loan requirements. But if we leave the assessment where it has been for the past 6-7 years, then should be able to, with the monies that we have going into the new year, which is $11,000, be able to pay down an additional $100,000. And that will take us to that loan of being able to pay it off in February of 2024 with a good reality. We should be able to pay that because it should be down to $300,000 and some odd $1,000 plus interest. So we would be paying that loan down probably about 18 months earlier than originally projected way back when the project started. So that's if we make no changes.
Chris, where's the cash flow benefit of paying down the loan 18 months early?
That's what I was going to say.
Interest.
At 4.7%?
Mm-hmm.
Do we still get that money though?
Savings?
Pardon?
Do we still get that money though?
What?
That's allotted to us from the tax?
No,
we paid off something.
We're saving 18 months of interest payments.
Right.
Yeah, but if you pay it off too quick, then the county won't give you that money.
What I'm concerned about is if we're paying something off too quick, and we've already budgeted for our payment structures as a district, and then we turn around and say we need $25,000 for doing something for the perimeter roads, then don't pay down the thing.
That is a choice. Yeah. That is an option available.
Use the money if you need to repair the roads.
It's just a matter of, are we going to collect, what is our assessment going to be for the CIP Phase 1? If we have to do more in general maintenance, maybe we don't want to have such a high CIP Phase 1, but we have to make sure that we meet at least the note requirements.
Do we know how many new properties have been built in the last year and what that cash flow is going to be in the non-ad valorem of these new property owners? Because there's a lot of houses have been built last year, and does that make up?
That's not going to change that doesn't change it, because our non-ad valorem is based on acreage, not properties, not houses, not market value.
Okay. So that dollar amount's
That's
doesn't change.
doesn't change, no.
It's not land value.
Okay, so the drainage budget, I reduced it from last year because of the 28.5, but I did increase it 10% to meet current economic conditions after speaking with people, the service providers, and anticipating that there are going to be some increases in the upcoming contracts because everything is costing more money. Gas costs more money, salaries more money, everything's more money.
Those current contracts, the swale, grass cutting, the tree cutting, any other contracts, not the service contracts.
Correct.
Operational contracts,
Correct.
maintenance contracts. Are they all now on a month-to-month basis, or have they been renewed? Because the question I'd have is, I'd want to go out and get some other bids. This kind of money now, $125,000 to cut the grass. Maybe you break it up into 3 or 4 contracts, smaller companies that can do zones and ways to save some money. Maybe there's a little different thinking here.
Yep.
Instead of just trying to have one contract. For example, today I met somebody who lives in our district. His company, I have no idea what his pricing is, but his company is specialized in the lower bush cleaning out. So there's a lot of overgrown bush type plants and small little trees in the culverts all over the place, in the ditches. So instead of Jared's Tree Service doing both, maybe split up the contract and it'll be better to bid it out. So somebody does the low stuff and Jerry just does the tree trimming and that's it, as an example. I'm trying to think of ways to save money for
But
all of us.
again, that's going to be up to the pleasure of the board and how they want to approach that solution. My goal here is to make sure, because we only have tax revenues to pay our bills, so we want to make sure that we have sufficient revenues to pay those bills. We don't know what all those bills are going to be at this point, because you don't do those negotiations until after the new year. It's too late then to submit a request to the county to change the assessment value.
If I can ask, what's the fiscal year?
October to September.
So why can't you do the bids right now for the October to September?
We have to notify the county by the end of the month of our assessment.
You've known that for 20 years, correct?
Direct the questions to the board.
Okay, you've known that for 20 years. You know when the fiscal year ends. Mr. Bradford, you've been in the fire business. You didn't go out and get bids in September. You started getting bids in June and July and April and May for future projects at the fire station.
I wouldn't disagree with you on how that can be done, and there are many ways that it is done. And many times, even in the fire service, you have a standard which you go by and percentages that you increase things to
Based on a bid.
based on past history.
And based on a forthcoming bid.
And this year, we're sort of in a unique situation that was not anticipated. Nobody could have anticipated how much fuel was going up, how much parts were going up, how much food was going up. Did that not say that, yeah, maybe we could have done something a few months ago, but all of this change ever since with COVID and politics and everything else, every time we turn around, everything is going up. At this point, the board has to try to put enough money in there to cover what we're currently doing and make sure that it can get done. Yes.
But why not do it ahead of time?
Well, I say, and I don't disagree with that. I can use myself.
Pardon?
I can use myself in my business. We went out and rebid the, whether it's pest control, whether it's lawn maintenance, whether it's insurance, where the starting bid was then. So we know as of 2 weeks from now, I can tell you right now what our bids are going to be.
But you have a unique system. I have several companies I own too, and I can go out and do the same thing that you're doing, and I agree with you 100%. The difference being, this board meets one time a month, and from that, we really have to start 4 months ago to be able to come to this place where we're at today. So,
agreed. So
you can say the board is negligent. I'll sit here and say, yeah, you're right. Okay, I don't have an answer beyond that. But did all of us anticipate how much things were going to change this year? I didn't.
But not to beat a horse, the engineer was negligent and you got rid of it. So is that, I mean,
Well,
I guess what it should be is a standing agenda item in January.
Yeah, to start putting
Just put it standard on the
Because-
agenda, that January, we need to go to bids. Every company does it.
And honestly,
You
like,
know when your fiscal year is, standing agenda, we are now calling for open bids for this project. So this thing, and then you give them 2 months to respond, then you have plenty of information for the end of your fiscal year.
and I don't disagree with you, and that's something we can do for the upcoming year. Unfortunately, we're behind the 8 ball, and
Understood.
we can't back up and change that.
And I guess the key is to try that it doesn't happen again.
Pardon?
As
Well, we
long
did
as,
in January start having contractors come in.
We
present-
started our contractors coming in
Yes.
and talking to them about their contracts and things like that. And we realized at that time, we needed to go back and review the contracts to find out exactly what our contractors were doing for the money they were charging us. So this didn't start yesterday, okay? We're trying to fix it, and there's no answer for it except participation that I said earlier from the general public that we represent. You're sitting here tonight for that reason, and I 100% agree with you.
and I know Chris at least 3 months ago put out, if not longer, trying to rebid some of them, and none of the contractors wanted to actually lock in a bid. They were dragging their feet because they didn't know where everything was going.
Right.
Yeah. So I know how many times you've hounded. I know a
That's
couple
why
of services that work for us, and we're like, you would come in every month and say, "We still haven't got a bid. We still haven't got a bid." So,
And we took it one by one.
yeah,
just
yeah,
because-
we brought them in one at a time.
Because of the fact of not being able to, in one general meeting, address all of the contracts in addition to, bidding it out.
so for next January, we'll have the requirements needed by the contractors, and we'll be ready to submit them. Hey, put a notice out, submit your bids. This is exactly what we're doing.
Correct.
You have my word on that from me, okay? That we
That's
will
Yeah.
work toward that goal.
So Chris, just for clarification, what's being proposed here is either a 9.55% increase or up to a 20% increase in next year's.
This would be on your tax bill in November.
Oh, so you can put it on this year's.
This is the November, the fiscal
Okay,
year.
That's what I'm trying to
Yeah,
clarify.
the fiscal year is for 22-23. We are paying 22 taxes in November. So this is what's going to appear on your tax bill in November.
And you calculate on average, what is that, $100 more a year, 200 per?
Okay, so let me just kind of finish up here. The miscellaneous is gate remote, software, phone, road lighting, annual meeting expenses, blah blah blah. PO box. Road budget includes $18,000 for perimeter road cleaning, $6,000 for signage replacement, and then $25,000 for general road repairs. Those are projects that are being added to the budget that weren't in prior years' budgets. So that's why the road is more than what you would see in the prior years. And then the swale mowing includes a 10% increase, as you mentioned, from 114 to 125.4. So when I was working on this, I met with Mr. Bradford. He was looking at it. He had some concerns about the overall cost. He really wanted to keep the tax revenue down to under $500 per acre, which caused some changes and some things to be cut. But then after this past weekend and this past week, he has gone through and done a real good survey of the perimeter roads and is concerned about the washouts on the perimeter roads and the need for repairs along the perimeter roads so that especially if we do have some major storms, we're going to be ahead of the game instead of behind the game. And so what he was saying tonight was, even though as much as he wanted to keep it at under 500 an acre, he's was thinking we needed to go to the right side of the board, and instead of saying 50,000 contingency, that's going to be an actual 50,000 road project. So that would take the per acre revenue to $547.03, which is a $91.36 annual increase over last year.
Per acre.
And
Per
what-
acre.
And what we're dealing with this year, and there's nobody that anticipated the growth of our community. We're now, every street we have new housing starts. We have hundreds of dump trucks running up and down our roads every day. And for those of you who may have, go out and walk the perimeter roads. That has nothing to do with the dump trucks. Only the paved roads. And as soon as the chuck holes start, it was, I believe last year when Judy was still on the board, we authorized spending $1,500 on 3 streets just to fix the edge of the road next to the stop signs where the trucks had been cutting the corners. Well, I've been out on my golf cart on every single street we have, and I can tell you, and I'm not an engineer, but I can tell you that I've seen what happens to roads when you start to get a small hole, and then it begins to get bigger, and all of a sudden, it's not a $50 fix. And if we hire one guy to come out who's got some hot asphalt in his truck, and we give him 10 roads to do, it's going to be a lot more economical. But we're going to end up having roads that are in disrepair with big holes in them if we don't put some money aside to take care of them. And that's why I came in tonight to Chris and I said, look, you know, I've never been in an organization where we actually raised the budget. I was always in a military organization. Values of houses went up, it gave us more money. We actually reduced our budgets when we could do that. This is the first time I sit here and tell you that if we don't do something, then the community is going to probably end up suffering from it. If we end up at the end of this year and don't spend $10 on asphalt and other things, then I would just tell you thank the Lord for that or whatever. But the bottom line being is that if we don't plan for it, we won't have the money to fix it. And I own several pieces of property, and I know at $91 a piece, I got to kick up that money. But I would rather kick up the money. We spent all this money 15 years ago on these roads, but it's not us tearing them up. It's these dump trucks. And I'm going to tell you, you can ask Tony and his wife sitting back there. They actually are out. You look at the crumbling edges of the roads, and you go even back as far as the perimeter roads, and where trucks back up and turn around because there's not sufficient area for them, and their tires run off. They're crumbling the edges of the roads. To begin with, it was 1 inch. Today, on many of the roads, we're 6 inches and 12 inches. And those things need to get taken care of before. Go ahead, Tony.
And those truck loaded, especially when it starts raining, that dirt is a lot more heavy, weight over 80,000 pounds. I can tell you because I got a Class A driver license, I operate 18-wheeler, and I know how is the heavy equipment. And going through there every day with that vibration, that's not the only damage they make. That vibration damage even the water pump or a resident that is closed or the vibration continually. It makes a lot more damage that people don't understand.
You can see where our asphalt on some of the roads where we had a lot of construction, the asphalt's actually shifting and cracking. So those things are going to come apart.
And some of the old repairs that we've already done, I know like on my street, Busy Bee and on Lucy, I see they're already starting to.
Well, I think, and that goes back to what does $1,500 fix? If we actually hired a real contractor to go in there and cut out the debris, dig down and put a foundation under that again, then maybe our $1,500 would have been better spent. But we can do what the county does sometimes and keep throwing bad money after good and rotate that over and over again. Or maybe, just like you said, we need to bid better, we need to plan better.
Mm-hmm. And I think you're making an assumption too that people would be opposed to spending a little bit more money, knowing that what the end result is a better product. So just because you're raising a budget doesn't mean that as long as you've accounted for it, I don't mind spending an extra $50 or $80 or $90. If I know that every time I turn a corner, my car's not going to go into a pothole. Mind you, if it does, that means I'm cutting the corner too sharp anyway, which just seems to be the norm. So, yeah, don't sell them short. I mean, just like I say,
but I think
if you need to spend money, you need to spend money.
I think what we really need to do is everybody needs to talk to their neighbors. We need to start getting more community participation in the things we do out here and call the chairman of the board or whoever the manager turns out to be, I was going to point at you, but I decided not to do that. But whoever the manager turns out to be, because the manager will be running the things out here. But so those repairs can be made early before they become big projects.
Yeah.
So that's why I suggested we put the money back in and not take it out.
And if you know anybody that can bid this stuff, seems to be our number one.
Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry.
That seems to be our number one problem, is getting bids, like just the engineer. Every bid we put out, since I've been on this board, you get one person, maybe two, that come back, you know. So if you know somebody that's in the trade or something that can at least give us some insight or some more bids.
Well, as a community, I would like to think that even on the Nextdoor website, I would like to see people that live in our community doing work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that would be a number one thing. And I think if you really went door to door, you probably have 7 or 8 landscaping crews that live in the neighborhood.
Well, Tony lives in the neighborhood.
Yeah. No, I know that. I saw that. You know, and I know that it should be there. And I've been to the Nextdoor website a couple times. So that, also on the water board things, should get it up there. If we can't, we figure some way to just get people in.
Well,
a lot of people, it breeds competition too. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you can sharpen your fences doing that.
You notice the signs we put up for the meetings? We could probably use signs for advertising if we're looking for people within our community.
And you know that people come into the neighborhood, everybody comes in. So
I just want to mention that other thing that we forgot is garbage truck and recycle truck. Every week is around the area. They are pretty heavy too.
Mm-hmm.
And also talking about other business, okay, they need to watch their qualities, the experience, and also the liability and insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And the kind of work that they do.
Okay, go ahead. One other thing I would just note, neither Gerald nor Tony have increased their fees in I don't know how many years, 3 years, Judy? At least. So they've been the fact that they haven't increased their fees over the 3-year period is mostly been due to their relationship with the community, trying to help keep the cost down for everybody. Now, one other thing I do want to make a note and observation so that you see this. You see where I don't have anything beginning balance and I don't have an ending balance, but if you just look at the numbers plus and minuses, you'll see that there is an actual positive $39,982 on the backside of the expense. And what that comprises is the $20,000 from the Brooks. That comprises use and connection permits. I'm only estimating 9,000 because we've had so much new construction. That's going to slow down as interest rates go up and things happen. So I'm not expecting quite as much in the use and connection permit area. So we're not going to get that much money. And then I've got budgeted 75 remotes at $50 per remote. So, and then even though we have $15,000 here for bank interest, that's not monies that we use. That's money that goes into those accounts and continues to build those accounts. So if I take that $15,000 out of the 39, that means I've got a surplus of $24,000 that is available. I can't count on it, maybe. You can't count on it because I may not get those connection permits. I might not get all those remote things. The Brooks may decide, hey, I'm not paying you this year because we just can't afford it. Who knows? Because there was one year where I couldn't find that they did pay it. So
pump the water back onto their golf course.
So that is a surplus that can be used to either continue to pay for some projects that we have,
or put it in the rainy day fund.
or put it in the rainy day
so
fund.
that-
So we're not so tight that we're squeaking to the point that we might not be able to meet the budget. I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
So my ultimate question is, without some increase, we're not going to make the budget for 2023, based on the current forecast of expenses and operations. Is that correct or not?
You're not going to be able to do the projects that have been discussed. You're not going to be able to do the road improvements, the signage repairs, the striping on the roads. You're not going to be able to do the perimeter road cleanup. And I know someone questioned whether or not that was something that really met the needs of the district. And the only response I would say is Judy said once upon a time during the course of the meetings that we've had about the perimeter roads is that when the perimeter roads are put in and the gates are put in, it was always intended that there be a 2-foot inside of the gate for walking and pedestrian use. The district has never maintained that 2-foot area. So if the intention was at the time of the CIP that there would be a 2-foot span of area on the perimeter roads for people to use to walk, and they never budgeted for that maintenance, then have they failed the residents or not failed the residents, or does that not already say it's already built into a part of the project and part of the use of the funds?
So what road on the perimeter, we're talking about Mariah,
Benito.
So there are spots there we can't walk through because there's growth, there's vegetation growth, or what are we talking?
Well,
but also the bigger issue is the washouts. Because there's a big section where it's like sinking and washing, and that would be.
No, but I'm just talking about that 2-foot. So I think Julie, you mentioned that.
Yes.
Is there a purpose for that? Is that a water district purpose?
Exactly, to level the ground, to keep it nice and neat, and to help the people walking through. It would be safe to do that for the community, because the community always use those areas. They like to riding bike through there. People don't realize that just to do those areas, I'm gonna buy a tractor. It's a $20,000 diesel just to do that, just to start it, so while getting paid. I'm just working with the community to help the community because I live here. Okay? And I do other stuff that neither the board know that I do to the benefit of the community.
I thought it was supposed to get mowed twice with a brush hog. Did that?
That's
a
what.
trade-off that we will be able to subtract out.
Okay.
Because there's a little bit more to this than just the walking area.
Yeah.
We have areas that the berm that's supposed to be X amount of inches high is now almost down to 0. And those areas are going to have some moral put back in, some tractor work done to fill those up. If we go down to the very end road on the right side, I lost the name of it, it's Red Robin.
Oh, right, the first one?
Yeah. Go down to the end of that, make a left-hand turn. The road is washed out almost beyond out to the tracks where the trucks run back and forth there. And that's been an area that's been allowed to be used for trucks for some years. And now they're almost not able to pass that area because of the washout. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The gentleman who owns the house next door to that, his drains off of his roof, his gutter system happens to come down by his house, and then it's all downhill to our road. But that's supposed to run back to the holding, and if Bill's still sitting here, he would tell you there's a place where it would then transfer into the canal system. No place along the perimeter road is the water supposed to run over the edge and into our canal system because of the turbidity and the fact that it causes washouts. So we have a number of low areas. I was just down there today checking it. A number of low areas that are going to need maintenance, and that's part of
Because you put rip wrap in and fill it in.
I don't know that we need rip wrapping, but I think that an engineer would say add some moral to it, which is a heavy rock stuff, if we catch it before it washes out.
Yeah.
The area over that I'm talking about off of Red Robin and Bonita Bill, that's going to require maybe some rip wrapping put up against it. It's got a tree in the way that it's eroding around it, and it's causing, we have a lot of debris down in the basin now, and that needs to be fixed. So we've got a number of places right now around the outside, just the lack of maintenance on it, that needs to have some attention. And that's part of what this is about.
Okay. All right, let's move forward.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
Can I make some comments?
Please.
Added on to the end of Ms. Lawson's comments. The budget adoption process that the board is considering is two parts. One is to establish your anticipated expenditures for next year for your operations and for your maintenance, and to also provide for the mandatory repayment, annual repayment of your loan for your 2003 bond issuance. So you've got to do those things. But in addition to that, you have to also consider reserves. It's the auditor will tell you, and did tell you in fact, that you've got to have some element of reserve capital in your budget, and for emergencies in particular, and also with regard to the first 3 months of operations that Ms. Lawson was talking about earlier, between October 1st and the end of December, when you begin to receive your money in the second half of December, is what you're probably going to have happen. So you've got to consider for your budget, operations and maintenance, the loan repayment, number 2, and reserves, number 3. Those are the big broad categories. Within those categories, you can have subcategories. Ms. Lawson has explained all of that to you. When you determine and get an idea of what you believe those 3 categories together total, you've got 2 assessments available to you to pay them. One is the assessment for your operations and maintenance. That should cover operations, maintenance, and reserves for the most part. The other assessment relates to your capital improvements project, the 2003 bond repayment, and there is also a small reserve element in it. Normally, what Ms. Lawson explained to you is, in the past years, you have set that assessment at a higher rate than is absolutely necessary for the annual repayment, so that you have been able to pay down the loan faster than is required under your loan documents. But the point was made that if the interest rate is a low interest rate, maybe you do not want to, maybe it would be better to not prepay it as to the same rate that you've been prepaying it, and maybe use that as an offset to an increase in the operations and maintenance and reserves budget that you're going to need to do, so as to cover some of these other projects that you've talked about. Because, and I'm going to summarize several points that have been made, the improvements, the roadway improvements in the district were generally constructed through the capital improvements project that was approved in 2003 and constructed in 2004 and 2005. And those now are reaching an age where they are starting to deteriorate at a more rapid pace than they did in the past. Together with the substantial additional construction that has occurred in the district, those 2 elements together equals quicker deterioration of the roadways, which will require in future years probably a greater maintenance budget for the maintenance of the roadways. That's what I have gleaned from everything that Ms. Lawson said. She's given you a very good outline of the costs that she anticipates you in establishing your budget tonight, or discussing your budget tonight. The main reason for that is so that you can set the assessment rates for that resolution that needs to be adopted, because the assessment rates, we need to provide those to the tax collector's office this month. It'll have to be provided to the tax collector before your next board meeting, and before September the 15th. So that's the reason that you need to establish those 2 assessment rates at a minimum tonight. The budget, you can still do some finagling with it, but you have to set the assessment rates tonight. And then once you do that, they will drive the budget that you adopt and the particular elements of the budget, remembering that the budget is the roadmap. There are still fluctuations that may and probably will occur during the year as a result of inflation, as a result in better bidding, possibly of some of the work to be performed through a request for bids documents that may end up in lower fees being charged on some of the items and savings occurring, and or changes in the inflation rates and other things that are outside this board's control. That's where you sit tonight. The adoption of the assessments, of the 2 assessment rates, are really the most important decision the board has to make related to the budget now, tonight, has to be done before you adjourn.
The 9 of the 20.
The 20.
I don't see any way around.
And taking public input is also.
Is there any other public input?
What monies will be kept in the budget over the next 18 months by not paying down early? What is basically mostly principal now in this loan? How much cash are we keeping in the budget by not paying down?
All
18
right,
months
so let's talk about the CIP loan. That money that we collect for the CIP cannot be commingled with the regular general maintenance budget. So it is separate and apart. So if you're not going to charge the same assessment as has been charged in years past, and you only charge what you need to meet the loan service, that's not going to do anything for the general maintenance budget.
Okay.
It's not raising the
But-
rate that way.
No.
No, all you're going to do is you're not going to pay. This left hand's not going to pay quite as much because your right hand's paying a little bit more.
Right.
Understood.
And that's the point is there are 2 assessment rates that are charged by the district. Together they total a number that everyone pays.
One is for the loan.
Yes, sir.
And one is for general maintenance.
One element is for the loan, one is for general maintenance. The loan element, the loan assessment, can only be used for payment toward the loan itself of either principal or interest. And in the past, the board has set the assessment rate for the loan repayment at a assessment rate number that is higher than the actual minimum principal and interest payment that has to be made for the fiscal
I
year.
understand.
Yes.
And if I'll be honest with you, I didn't bring that spreadsheet with me, but in recalling it for this year, on the 1 1/4 acre lot, where it's been $742.74 is what we've been paying. I think it's like $667 something. So it's only $80 more on an
So
acre
basically,
and a
the
quarter
general
lot.
maintenance budget is 5 years tried and true.
No, I'm talking about this is
I
the
understand
CIP.
that. So what the average person's going to pay. The general maintenance budget, you have 5 years of pretty much good numbers. So that's pretty much not going to change
Oh.
any. So all now we're asking is, are we going to give $80 back to the average homeowner? Is that what you're saying? By voting it to be the lower assessment.
For the CIP loan to
For the
offset
CIP
the
loan.
increase.
Yes, or use it as a set off on the
Set off.
operation and maintenance budget, anticipated increases based on inflation and everything else that has been discussed.
But I thought you just said it couldn't be intermingled. It couldn't be
But it can't be intermingled, yeah.
So you got a
Rob,
lower.
So just in case the budget comes to be higher because of this year's series of events.
Right.
So the assessment for the loan can be reduced below its current rate slightly, and that same dollar amount can be used for the operations and maintenance budget assessment increase if that's what the board wants to do. That's all I'm saying.
So here's a curious question. After the CIP is paid off, let's say in 18 months from now, everyone will average save on their taxes $600, $700, $500, whatever their acre.
Yeah, it's all
Let's say
red.
$600
Yeah.
a year. But now we're coming to basically getting close to end of life of all this assets and infrastructure.
That's,
So are now we gonna be back and like, don't worry about that cash flow, Mr. Homeowner. You're still gonna probably be paying $600-700 because we need that money now to rebuild.
Right. And at that point.
And that's the kind of plan that I'm expecting the board to start showing, a 5-year budget forecast, us as taxpayers. Here is the plan of what we have as assets. Here's an assessment by the engineering firm of what's the lifespan of those assets. And here's what we think either rebuilding some of the assets in phases or one big rebuild. Either way, no one's going to save $600-700 off their taxes in the next 2 years. Well, that's what I'm hearing, based on all these forecasts. So the way you have your non ad valorem,
right?
And we
the dollar amounts doesn't sound like it's going to change that much, unless the board comes up with a forecasted budget says based on future costs of repairs, some capital improvements, and operation maintenance. We forecast based on estimates of bids, probably need at least $400 per acre in the future. So our taxes go down a little bit, but that money now goes into a full general maintenance budget to run this thing, because now we've paid off, unless you're going to do a complete new capital improvement of.
No, you don't want to do that.
We already started about a year and a half ago looking into getting bids and stuff and setting that stuff up and talking about we were averaging 10 more years left on the roads, if I'm not mistaken.
And who said that?
I think it was the engineer. 8 to 10, is that what it was when we had to start really?
Well, nobody anticipated the trucks.
Yeah, that's true too. And I think everything got accelerated when,
So,
but yeah, it's.
that's something that's gonna take its own course, and I think we need to do the budget.
Yeah, no, I know.
Now, understand too, the CIP phase 2 was the actual paving, was it not, Judy?
I can't hear because they're talking.
Okay. What wasn't the CIP phase 2 the actual cost of the paving of the roads? Phase 1 was the
dirt work and the
infrastructure.
infrastructure, yeah.
Yeah, and then CIP.
Phase 1 was the drainage.
Right.
Phase 2 was the paving.
Right.
So that was a lesser amount.
That was a much lesser amount. Much lesser
And we had
amount.
said in the past, this was back a few years ago, and that at some point, the roads were going to need to be, they're built to last a certain number of years. And at some point, they had to probably have some kind of a resurfacing, whether it was minimum or a lot depending. And we had said way back that in this past year, we were going to start getting some prices and some input from our engineer and so forth as to what our options were. In other words, would it be just like a skim coat? Does it have to be done all over the whole neighborhood? And get some assessment, and so we knew looking forward what it was going to cost. Because also, hoping maybe not to have another bond fund to get the money, maybe to save some, maybe pay for maybe different kind of loans. And these were the things that it was anticipated several years ago. This was our goal looking forward, because we knew this was coming. And this has kind of dropped by the wayside, but in the last couple of years, but that was kind of the thought way back. So, because you're going to have to do something at some point, and like you were saying before, now we've been band-aiding. And we can probably still do that for a while, but there's going to come a point when...
Can't do it anymore.
Hey, I can make a motion.
Yeah, I just want to mention too that also Mother Nature, I'm sorry for my English, okay? Mother Nature sometimes don't help. When this is very hot in the summertime right now, the temperature can go on top of the blacktop over 140, 150 degrees, and that crack with the blacktop too on top of what's going on.
Definitely.
Okay, all right.
Go ahead.
Any other questions, comments?
So what was the,
I just have
what
a question.
was the choice?
Go ahead, Judy.
I have a question, just about something that was mentioned earlier about adding mowing to the surrounding roads that hasn't been done before. This question is for Mr. Pringle. I mean, it was always my understanding that the board was only authorized to spend money on things that improved or involved drainage. and for a certain purpose, that we were not authorized to spend money on whatever we felt like, whether it was putting in a bicycle path or whatever. That's why in the past, there were certain projects that came up that we weren't authorized to do. So I'm not clear on adding mowing to make it nice to walk around, if that is something that the board is authorized to spend money on.
Please.
The right of ways, the maintenance of the right of ways is an authorized expenditure. I have seen some Attorney General's opinions from the state of Florida Attorney General that talks about the maintenance of the right of way and how far that can be taken, and whether, like with the roads, as an example, the road surfaces. There was a purpose of paving the roads, and that was to minimize, reduce the turbidity going into the swale ditches of having dirt roads. I've seen some expansions of that concept to cover additional activities by a water control district. I'll have to verify. Is the bomb about to go off? I'll have to verify that expenditure can occur for that. I believe it very well could be that there would be some ability to do some of that. Yes, ma'am. I'm not sure how far. That I'll have to verify, but I believe there's some flexibility in the water control district's authority. One of the reasons I say that is I've done some work on another water control district.
Sorry about that.
For another water control district.
Thank you, Alan.
Where they've done some maintenance that you would not normally think was within the parameters of the water control district's activities. So there is some flexibility, and there is some latitude, I believe, in that definition.
I'd like to just make a comment to Judy here. Florida Statute 298.22, Section 2. The district may clean out, straighten, open up, widen, or change the course of flow, alter, deepen a ditch, canal, drain, river, water course, natural stream, or concentrate diversion. Divide the flow of water in and out of said district, construct and maintain main laterals, ditches, canals, levees, dikes, slams, sluices, reservoir, holding basins, pumping stations, siphons, and may connect in some way or connect with levees and ditches and other works, therefore, that are in support of the jurisdictional water management district with any course of the movement of the water. So to me, it's kind of nebulous about, does mowing it make it look like a golf putting green affect positive or negative the flow of the water on those walking paths? Now, I do agree with Mr. Bradford, because I personally see it myself. Some of those perimeters, you can see where there's a levee, a berm, almost the size of this chair, up on the right before it goes to those ditches. And you can almost see a little natural swale in the grass and everything. If you had a golf cart and drive back there, or even a dirt bike, like a bicycle, a mountain bike. And there's other ones where the naked eye can see it's going like this. And some it's carved out from water that must be coming off from the other side, either someone's house or whatever. To me, I would think that this clause here says that the board and the district is supposed to maintain the impact of those ditches. So go spend some money on build up a little berm or riprap or whatever. But mowing and cleaning the side up, I don't know if I personally see that as
Reality is we've been mowing it with a mower, even though it's a bush hog, 2 times a year. That's a mower. So whoever wants to sit and say that we can't mow it, we have been doing that since we did the road project.
But you're talking about increasing.
You're just talking about the type of mower.
Increasing it by like $20,000 to mow it regularly.
So you're just making a decision on how many times you want
I'm
to
not
vote,
making a
not how many
decision, I'm
times
just
other
asking
people might
if
want
it's
to
legal
vote.
for the board to spend extra money to do something that probably isn't needed, it's just an extra expense, just to make something pretty. Is that saying that, but it doesn't really impact the drainage, and I'm just asking Mr. Pringle if that's a legal thing, because I have read in the statute where it does specify that you're only allowed to spend money on certain things. That was my
Well, then I guess we shouldn't have been mowing it at all. I mean, that's what I hear you saying.
My question, you heard my question.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Please.
I believe my response is, number one, is it within the legal authority of the district to perform those actions? And then number two, if it is within that legal authority, what is the board in the exercise of the board's discretion going to rule? The first question of whether it's in the legal authority is the one that I've got to look at. And I'm just saying that in many instances, what I have seen in research and in the Attorney General's opinions, because there's not a lot of case law, most times in these kind of questions, the Florida Attorney General renders an opinion. It's not a case decision that has binding effect. It is an opinion. It's a recommendation. The board still has the discretion as to what they do. But most folks, when they read those Attorney General's opinions, if the Attorney General's opinion is that you can do a certain activity, then most agencies, even though they can't legally, they do rely on that opinion for their future actions. I'm just saying that I think the Attorney General's opinions that I've read related to water control districts, the Attorney General's office tries to say it is within the district's authority if it is somehow related to the maintenance of the district's right-of-ways. So in the use of those district right-of-ways, that's normally what it comes back to. What I have seen is a pretty broad definition of what is authorized to, quote, maintain those right-of-ways. And it's broader than what it says in the statute.
And the use of those right-of-ways?
And the use of those right. Yes.
So it's gray.
Yes.
Isn't this going down a slippery slope, Mr. Pringle, when you start using the district assets to improve things that are not related to the water flow of the district? I mean, it just seems that we could use the funds that we have to do these repairs on stuff that directly affects the water quality and flow of the district.
Right. And it's
especially when we're talking about an assessment, an added assessment versus something that's already been done in the past.
yes, sir. And my job is to keep the board legal. So if it's within the legal authority of the board's decision making, then that's my boundary. I don't sit up here as a fourth board member, and that's what you're talking about is their exercise of their discretion as a board to decide what is in the best interest of the district.
And the property owner.
That's the best interest of the district.
Property owner.
Yes, and that's when I say district, that's what
Because I'm
the
on one of those
district
ends.
is. Yes, sir. The district is to the
Right,
benefit.
so they can interpret it how they want, if they want.
If they have that legal authority, yes, ma'am. If it is
You're
with,
saying they do, that it's gray, and they kinda can, if they want to.
right, if there is legal authority to take an action, then it's strictly up to the board's discretion from that point. I say that over and over again because the property owners elect the board members to act on your behalf. So once they are in the seats, then that discretion is exercised for the best interest of the district, which I say, when I say district, I mean the property owners in the district.
So,
But if
Property
you're
owners
focusing-
that have direct, are directly affected by these things is not every property owner in the community. It's just the ones that are along the canals.
No, everybody's affected by it.
Everybody's affected in that everybody pays the assessments that provide the cash to perform those activities. Yes, sir. So everybody's affected.
So the real question is the board that the board is facing is: do they want to pay? Do they want to increase the level of maintenance for the perimeter roads for whatever the reason is that they want to increase the maintenance? And is that worth it to them? Is the $18,000 worth it for the benefit of that increased maintenance?
hang on a minute. So,
No,
who is doing the bush hog right now?
That's contracted to Gerald Street Service.
So he was through Tough this week.
Yep.
With his crew, and they just whipped through there and I haven't seen any bush hogs, but they're mowing the banks of the canal. And that's pretty much it on both sides.
They take exotics out, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So they're also using weed eaters to mow.
Oh, yeah.
So is that what we're talking about? That effort, or is he coming through with the bush hog and the?
No, what we're actually talking about is a partial trade-off with the amount of money that we pay to do one job to add it to more of a maintenance issue of maintaining those perimeter roads and allowing the grass to grow evenly across them. Nobody's adding sidewalks, but the perimeter roads are part of our subdivision.
All right. So I'm going to complicate this a little.
You normally do.
So if we didn't add anything to it, I have a hard time imagining that there's no walkable parts of the perimeter roads.
Well, that's wrong. There are places that are unsafe to be walked on if you want to do it.
Yeah. Okay, so I've never seen overgrown roads. But here's the thing. So if that's part of the maintenance of those roads for the protection of the water, it's obviously clear. If it's there for another purpose, there's two issues with that. One is that based on 298, can we do that to make it a nice walkway? The other thing, frankly, is the old issue, which I got my letter when I bought the property on Southern Strike, is about the right-of-way and what can we put on those right-of-way. So without establishing that we can actually force the owners to open up the walkways, which, I mean, without doing that, I'm not sure why we would pay to make it.
There's not homes on all of the lots. There's not homeowners on every piece.
On the perimeter roads?
Mm-mm.
Most of it, almost all of it.
No.
I think there's that homeowner built on every one of the end ones now.
No, not on our side.
There's a couple,
At the
yeah.
end
There's an
of
owner.
Busy Bee.
Oh, yeah, there's definitely an owner. There's someone owns that property.
Golden Eagles, I think.
It's the actual property, just so everybody knows, the property line for those canals goes on the other side of the
Correct.
the golf
Yeah, sometimes.
area. And
There's the chair.
so those are the perimeter ones, are the only ones where there's actually out of an acre and a quarter, you're giving up the 30 feet of line to the center of the street at the front that everybody gives up. And then there's another third of an acre that is used for the canal, maintenance on the other side. As a matter of fact, I started telling my landscaper to take care of my entire side. So you'll never have to worry about maintaining that again. Because if he comes through with a bush hog one more time, I'm going to let my dogs eat him, to tell you the truth. But that said, they just strip everything down. It's just terrible.
I know where
if
you are
look at
now.
What he did, the tire tracks and stuff, the mud he created, the turbidity that he caused on some of the side roads with that tractor.
I understand that, but I'm also not in favor of doing it very often, so I have more traffic walking through my side roads. I'm not a big fan of that. So again, it's my property. I understand it's an easement.
It's a road.
It's a road.
It's a road.
It's an easement.
No,
it's a road.
Bonita Bill and Mariah Lane are roads. There's a difference. I have an easement by my house. The power line goes right by it. That's an easement. I can't build anything on it. I can't construct anything there, and I have to make it available for the power company for for X amount of feet, and I happen to own the property on both sides of that power line. So I can't do anything on either side of that for X amount of feet.
So what if that RPL comes through and says, well, we're gonna build a walkway through that right away?
It's
You
an
have the
easement,
right.
they don't have a right to do that. We have roads around the outside of our community, which are Benita built, they were always open until the road project went in, and then the three people sitting up here decided to close it.
And what's the reason for them not to be closed?
I own property, I live out here, I
No,
take
just
taxes.
give me one reason
I'm
why
gonna tell you
it's
right
not
now,
closed.
if I wanna walk around the outside of the community on the perimeter road, I should be allowed to do that.
Okay, so why wouldn't I get a refund for the taxes paid on that property while you walk around the house?
We don't get a refund on our property that's in front of our house that we
Yeah.
by driving.
I have an answer.
Yeah, you've answered this
I have
before.
that as well, but I also have the property on the side here.
You know that when you bought
No, actually, I didn't know it was a road.
it. Yeah, it was.
It was an easement, and actually on my deed, it's
Cars,
written as an easement.
cars drove on that road,
Yeah.
until three board members decided to close it.
Yeah.
Mr.
I
Bringle,
moved out there
please.
with grass in the middle of the road that I drive on.
Yes.
English Drive.
All right, Mr. Bringle, please.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Beat this dead horse.
Yes, so remember, two assessments. That's ultimately what the board needs to act on tonight and approve tonight. Don't forget that, please. Now to answer your question.
Did I ask what?
Yes, sir, you did.
Okay.
I heard it. I promise I heard it. The easement that you refer to is a right-of-way, and I was going to explain this when we got down to almost the end of your agenda about the annual landowners meeting. I was going to talk about this. I did a letter to all the property owners related to the annual landowners meeting, because there's been a lot of discussion about the right-of-ways and what they really are. They are not a fee-owned right-of-way like I-75 is owned by the federal government, or like State Road 80 is owned by the state of Florida. They're not a fee-owned right-of-way like that. They are an easement right-of-way that has been dedicated, the same as other streets are dedicated, to the public use, to the district. So the district owns the right-of-way. Typically, except one place, they're 60 feet wide. One place on Tuck Lane, they are 30 feet. They're 30 feet wide coming down off of Strike Lane. They're 60 feet wide south of there. It was a mistake that was made when the subdivision plat was laid out. But those right-of-ways, those roadways are dedicated to the district, and in those right-of-ways, the district controls, they own the right-of-way, they control the use of the right-of-way, they control the construction of any improvements in the right-of-way, they control the maintenance of any improvements constructed in the right-of-way in that area. So you own the land underneath, but you own it subject to the district's dedicated right-of-way ownership on top of that. So they can do whatever is within, that's why I mentioned the legal authority phrase. Whatever is within the legal authority for a Chapter 298 district to perform, as described in the judicial decree that was adopted in 1969, in the early part of the year, sometime in April, May, June of 1969, there was a judicial decree that created San Carlos Estates Water Control District. Shortly thereafter, there was a map, Plat Book 1, maybe it's Water Control District, Plat Book 1, page 1, is the plat, 1, 2, 3, and 4 pages, is the plat of the Water Control District for San Carlos Estates Water Control District. And that plat controls the use of the right-of-ways described in that plat, because what you're going to see is a dedication statement in that plat. There's also an easement recorded just before that plat was dedicated. that gives a perpetual easement, right-of-way easement to the San Carlos Estates Water Control District for that 60-foot wide strip, every place except Tuck Lane to Strike Lane where it's only 30 feet long.
Mariah's 32.
So basically, the board has the opportunity to decide what those areas are used for the best interest of the community.
Bingo.
Wait a minute.
Excellent. That's
How can
exactly
that
what I
be
want to know.
true if it doesn't meet the criteria of the list that John just read? I mean, so if you, okay, for example, exactly what we're talking about. So if the board says, well, every homeowner on those properties have to open their road up to traffic, to walkways, none of that has anything to do with the water.
But it does have to do with that blanket broad authority that the statute gives to a 298 district that has then been further described in the judicial decree. I'll tell you another place to look. Look at the two bond validation final judgments that were entered in 2003 and 2005. They say, and I'm not gonna quote word for word, but the final judgment, the judge said, based upon the evidence presented in the case, the judge determined that the district was authorized to construct the roads and make the roadway improvements that were made within the 60-foot right-of-way. He said that the district had the right to control the development of those 60-foot wide right-of-ways with roadway improvements, swale ditches, pavement, all of that has been done, and the maintenance. That was necessary for the judge to say that because that became the basis for the district then going out and borrowing the money and having bonds issued to repay the money, or to generate the money, the revenue that was needed to make those improvements to the right-of-ways. So, all of that connects back to the authority the district has. It just does. It has that authority. It's there. It's legal to a great extent. And what I said earlier in response to Ms. Judy was the question of maintenance, the question of these particular uses of district revenue. Sometimes it's not real clear. Most of the time when it's not real clear and you ask the Attorney General for an opinion, they are going to be as liberal in that opinion as they can to determine and to say that the district has the authority to expend the money for maintenance of district right-of-ways in Chapter 298 districts.
Yeah, I just want to mention something, please. In my over 40-year experience, I have working with different community, Pelican Landing, The Colony, Bonita Bay, Fort Myers, anywhere. Every single community, I respect everybody's opinion, have their own walkway. And also another thing that we're missing in this community is a playground from the kids. When I've been around, they've been asking me, Mr. Tony, I would like to have a place to go play around. But don't worry, in the next board meeting, I will mention, I don't want to bring this subject is for future, but I just let you know, every single community have a walkway and a playground for the community.
We're not that kind of, yeah, water, we should start that
All right, let's move ahead here, guys. Let's keep moving.
Just one more thing. So basically, the whole thing is that a board, a 3-member board, can make the choice that's legal or moral, or right, by the homeowners.
Oh,
they can make all the choices that they can make, right?
Don't ask me all of that. I'm a lawyer. Legal authority is all I deal with. Don't ask me
Not
about
moral authority.
They basically can state what is the use of those areas.
Alan, I would say that the board has a fiduciary duty to the taxpayers to do the right thing for the benefit of the district.
And
if it means
I like
fixing
And that's
I like you.
And that's where the phrase "the best interest of the district" is that's where the board exercises their discretion for the best to take action for the best interest of the district. And whenever I say district, I've said it 2 or 3 times, that equals the landowners in the district. You are the district, the landowners are the district.
Thank you.
So ultimately, Alan, if we don't like what the board's doing, every year start voting them out and putting people in that you want.
And everybody's got different opinions of how things should be used, and I got that. And we don't want one of these.
No,
you know, I mean, where every time things change, they go back, and they change, and they go back.
Correct.
You know, there's got to be some kind of consensus. And for people that live there, and I understand it's nice to walk around the community. It's also not nice as a homeowner to, you know, when you're out in your pool having people, because those are the only lots here that is affected that way. And you know what I mean? So the whole entire side yard is affected by people, and I'm happy I haven't seen a 4-wheeler or a golf cart or anything like that, except yours, when you came by, when they picked up all that dirt, remember? Anyway, so, and that's great, but it's still an area that is...
You don't even own a golf cart.
I don't even own a golf cart.
Somebody dumped some of the dirt in the side yard. You came out back there because somebody... It doesn't matter.
I don't own a golf cart. Okay.
But anyway, it's one of those things that those are the only lots that are affected that way. And I understand. I can just completely understand that, okay, is it worth upsetting the people that live on those end streets to make a walkway around the neighborhood for the entire place? You know what I mean? It's all, you're already kind of shorted on the size of the space that you have legal right to use. And had I known it, I never would have bought the house in the first place.
Me either.
And it would have been, and it was a Fannie Mae property when I picked it up. Had I been explained to that, or had there been anything, never would have bought the house. I'd have let it rot right where it was. But that said, I own it. I love the spot. But again, and it doesn't happen a lot, but it does affect me. And I think it would be almost, what's when somebody's self-serving for somebody to come and tell me that it's best for people to walk around than for me to get quiet enjoyment of that area and not have to worry about that. And if there's another argument out there that, I don't know what it could be.
Well, I can look at it this too. You know, we have the easement to the center of the road in front of our houses, and John and I can attest to the fact that a lot of people walk their dogs, and we've had to put sign up, please pick up your poop. So, I mean, like, there could be offensive things. Exactly. And
everybody in the neighborhood has
people can pass me just as you can pass you. Yeah.
What's that?
You're saying that you object to having people pass the side of your yard in that easement, is what I'm getting.
On that road.
Yes.
On that road.
Well, it's our backyard.
Right.
It's the rent.
Yeah.
You want somebody riding or walking through your backyard all the time? No, you would.
But it's a road.
But there's
It's
no
a side
necessity that is beneficial to the district and the water flow in the district to have people walking or riding through my backyard. It's personal gain for whoever wants it, and I don't want it, and I'm a property owner. He doesn't want it. He's a property owner. You know, if you guys are representing us, I would think you'd be taking that into account. But it doesn't seem like that's the case.
And there's been some misinformation too, because everybody that I've talked about, well, you guys get a tax break for having that.
No, we
You
don't.
don't.
We
You don't. I know. We
We're
don't.
not we get a tax break
We know
because
that.
a third of my lot is actually the fence, the other side of the canal, and then the access road.
Right.
All that space is 60 feet.
60 feet.
And what's the complete width of a regular lot?
I don't know that.
165 by 330.
165. So 60 out of 165 is an area that can't be used by the home. So
Well, you pay taxes.
but I pay taxes on it. And so at some point in time, I guess the board would have to sit and say, well, listen, we do need to maintain it. We have a responsibility to
We do.
maintain those
We have a
canals.
responsibility.
Absolutely we do. I have no question there whatsoever. Do we have to maintain it in a fashion where everybody and their dog can come through there? No, that's a good question. I don't know that I would agree with that.
Well, they've had signs up on them for years that says pedestrian.
Only.
I'm not talking about years. I'm talking about what's right now.
I'm talking about right now too. The
Yeah.
signs have been there for years. They're still there. Unless people have removed them, the signs are on every gate saying pedestrian passage and you can walk there. The signs have been there.
The problem is the signs are at the middle of the gate though, and nobody sees them until they're down there. And that's been brought up.
I'm sorry, even for what's your point?
Nothing. I used to walk around there and ride around there all the time until 3 board members decided we couldn't walk on it anymore.
So let me ask you directly, as Jim Bradford.
You can.
Is it more important for you to be able to walk down that road, or for me, as the homeowner, to enjoy that little strip? With all the streets that we have where you can bike up and down or walk up and down on the asphalt, is it more important for you, Jim Bradford, to
Well,
be walking?
I'd only say this to you, with all due respect. I once had an offer on the property that Brad has back there. I had the plans and everything for a home on it. I fully intended to build a house on it. What I said was an offer on it. I knew very well it was a road at the time. I knew very well, and my wife's behind you, she can contest to that I was not going to have the right to block that off. I knew that people would walk on it. I still loved the piece of property. And I knew that the tranquility of the preserve behind me was there. I would accept the fact that people are going to walk there to be able to have my home on the end with the tranquility of the swamp on the other side of the road. So I was in the very position knowing what I was buying at the time. The only difference being is you said you didn't know. But I knew I was buying that. The only reason I didn't get it was because a man's handshake wasn't good enough for him. And I gave him a full-fledged offer on the place, and we were going to do the paperwork. And I called him up in the morning. We were supposed to do it at his attorney's office. And he said, "Oh, no, Joe Blow down the street offered me $10,000 more."
You're a
I was
politician.
out. Pardon?
You're a politician, my friend.
It's not being
Is
a
it better
politician.
for you, Jim Bradford, to have the right to walk down that area, or for me to have quiet enjoyment of that property? Yes or no?
Okay, I own property on Fort Myers Beach, and people use my canal all the time. I have a swimming pool right there, but I don't get to tell them not to pass by.
I know you don't get to tell them, but would you like to have it private? Not private, but would you like not to have people walking there? So just answer the question. Is it better for you to walk around the community, or is it better for me to have access to
I'm not trying to
privacy?
be a politician, but I am
Well,
gonna
it's
say
only two things. It's yes
with
or no.
With the hundreds of dump trucks we have going up and down the road, I would rather see a child on a bicycle walking the back road than I would see him splattered on Stripe
I
Line.
think that he has an expectancy of some privacy when you buy out there. It's not a gated community. It doesn't have sidewalks. It doesn't have the walkability that gated community does. He bought there because he expected some privacy.
I understand that, and ever
That's
since,
the point.
ever
If you
since
want
I,
walkability, go to a community.
ever since I have been here, those roads have had signs on them.
But that's not the question I asked you, Jim. My question is straightforward. Would you rather have it open for you to walk, or for me to have private on that?
If I want it, I don't get that
Oh
choice.
my God, it's yes or no.
It's a wrong. You do get that.
Okay.
It's part of the subdivision.
You are making the choice.
It's part of the subdivision.
It's part of the subdivision.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
I enjoy walking on
At
it
the
with
end of
respect.
Lucy Lane, they paved that road. Those people who own that property don't get a choice whether it got paved or not paved. It got paved during the road project for whatever reason. The asphalt runs right there and dead ends at the guy's property that used to be the chairman on the board. Now, why it went there, I don't have any idea. But at the end of Lucy, left-hand turn, full length of the people's property. So if that had happened to your property, you'd be dealing with a road there.
But the truth is, had it happened to that property, when I bought the house, it would have been fairly obvious that that was the case.
You're right. I
And
don't disagree with you.
So, again,
Okay,
you call
so-
me, I'll give you my card
We'll
number,
get-
you can tell me the yes or the no.
Okay,
That'll-
so here's the bottom line. Here's the bottom line. That the 18th. You okay?
I'm getting too much help.
That's getting too much, y'all.
Oh,
All right. Thank
There you go.
you. I bring it down. This lady's stiff. And you used to say that. Thank you.
This has nothing to do
Are we?
Wait a minute. Let me say something. The 18,000 that's in question. The $18,000 in question, which is what was for the perimeter road clearing, is $16.53 an acre. So if the board
We can
says,
take $16 off, because like say I hired my landscaper to take
Well,
care of all that stuff.
so if the board decides that they don't want to allocate $18,000 for the perimeter road clearing. But yet they still want to have the $50,000 for the perimeter road maintenance, for the canals, the berms and everything. Then we would reduce that on the right side of the table there, the 547.03 by 1653.
You know, I don't like.
Now there's a little fudge in there because I'm not calculating the tax collector's 4% and stuff. I don't have my calculator. I don't have my computer up with the spreadsheet. It's going to automatically go boom and give me the real number. But that's the dollars and cents that you're talking about. So you can reduce the 547.03 by 1653 if the board decides it doesn't want to allocate $18,000 to the perimeter road maintenance, which is basically the mowing of the perimeter roads. That's the dollars that we're talking about.
So looking at it that way, everything's a negligible thing. Milton Friedman once said the sum net effect of a bunch of negligible things need not be negligible. So if you could look at every line in here and say, well, it's only $1 here, $10 here. Yeah, it's vote for everything, and then we get $10,000 tax bill. So I don't like how you vote.
What's the reserves?
I think what we're seeing here, what the people in the
No, I think you got me wrong, David. I was trying to give the board and you whatever decision is made.
Reduce a little bit of the amounts,
right?
But still possibly have an assessment to put some money in to fix these perimeter roads. Because I personally see some of these roads now.
Correct.
Fix them
where
basically,
you can see the berm is gone. You can see there's a funnel right there. Like,
no, I understand.
So that I think has to be taken care of. And if the funds are not in the current forecasted budget without some assessment of an increase of money, I personally like, okay, what do you need? Another $100 a year? I'll give you the $100 fixed so we don't have water problems. But all the other stuff, no, I haven't made my mind up on that. But if you need more money for legitimate operational maintenance that impact the water district's duties, fiduciary duties for water impacting that goes in and out of this district, I personally like, okay, I'll give you a little more money.
I think what Alan's saying and everybody's saying is, I don't think it's the $16. Hell, everybody's probably got that in their pocket right now. It's what it's being used for is the issue.
Yeah. That's right. So that's what I was saying. If they board,
the budget adoption.
Well, I know what I'm saying. Leave it in there. Leave the $16 in there.
Thank you.
Put it towards reserve fund for the rainy day instead of mowing.
Yeah.
Extra mowing.
Yes.
And the berms aren't, like I say, you
Yeah,
can see
berms
after
aren't
a rain
going to water.
that they were
That's
sitting
more
right in that
problem.
flat area and just stay there until the disperse.
And the reserves are important too, according
Exactly.
to the auditor. That's an
We have
important
to have-
aspect.
Okay, so can I make a motion?
I wish you would.
2105. Is there any other word I need to put
There's
on that?
there's a resolution. It has two parts to it. The two parts are the resolution for the maintenance, and then the second part is I can't even
CIP.
talk. It's so late.
CIP.
There's two parts to the resolution. One is the adoption of the maintenance assessment. The second is the adoption of the CIP assessment. You need specific numbers for those two assessment rates for the resolution, and then you're done with this item.
well, the CIP, you don't have one rate because of the way it's.
Why don't you? You bet you well,
I have the total. I have the
Okay.
total dollar amount.
okay, that's the number. That's the number.
Read
Which-
it off, Chris.
Okay, so does the board want to pay down
The assessment
assessment by
for
100?
the loan further.
Yes.
Or do you want to pay the annual? Do you want to have the assessment for the loan repayment at the current rate, which will result in some extra pay down of principal, or do you want to have it at a reduced rate?
Or something in between?
We were hoping to.
Yeah.
I was hoping to pay that. That was my 2 cents.
Okay.
To leave it at the current rate.
Where are we at as far as Tuscan and our accounting firm goes on paying it down like we did the first portion? Are we okay
That's
doing
different.
that?
That's another subtopic that we don't
As
want to
long
go
as
in
we're
there.
okay with it? then I'm okay with doing that.
With leaving that assessment
Yes.
as it has been this year?
Yes.
Okay.
So that would be $562,325 and change.
Motion made. Which means you're not paying it down 18 months early.
No, that means we are. That includes the $100,000 additional principal pay down.
So then,
But it sounds like we need a little bit more money to start acting on roads, though.
Well, that's just, that was my ultimate question. You pay down the CIP early.
That's all budget stuff, which will be.
Then we eventually should have some money
No.
in for things in the future.
let me clarify, Mr. Chairman. If you, whatever assessment you establish for the CIP payback,
Yes.
you cannot use
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
those
Yeah, that
dollars
was
for
a-
maintenance.
This is the first
or
one we're
operations.
able to do. Yes. That was my bad.
But you can add to the general maintenance budget, leave the numbers the same that people are paying, and start putting more money into the roads.
Yeah, but that's a totally different thing.
Totally
That's-
different
that's
thing.
later.
But
Yeah,
I'm looking at the homeowner. The homeowner's gonna be paying out the same amount of money every year, whatever it is. It's just gonna be going, instead of this end, it's gonna go in this end, and we start getting some roads done. Right?
They're gonna get higher in the future.
Yeah. So the motion was made to.
The motion was made,
Leave the
the
CIP.
motion was made to have the loan repayment CIP assessment left the same as it has been last year.
Yes.
For the district
Motion.
purpose.
I'll second that.
Jennifer,
Yes.
all in favor, say aye.
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 So then the other assessment is the maintenance and operations assessment.
Right, so,
And that is going to be either the
20%.
the 20.05%.
We're not
Right.
going to specifically earmark the money for mowing.
Yes.
We're
well,
gonna put it
in the budget, we're going to put X number of dollars, the 50,000, and what we have there for the, under the road umbrella
Yes.
and or drainage umbrella. I don't know how, I'm thinking drainage umbrella is probably more appropriate.
They're going to adopt the budget later.
That's what I mean. You can
Yes.
still move money around
In the budget.
Correct.
We're just
Yeah.
setting the millage rate
The
basically.
assessment rate is what
Assessment
you're
rate.
setting now
So-
for the maintenance and operation.
So to have that at 547.03 per acre, which would be for a 1.25 acre assessment, $683.78. It's $114.20 more a month on an 1.25 acre lot. I mean, more a year.
More
More a year. More a year.
A month would be like, okay.
More a year.
A year.
So that's 547.03,
Correct.
and that would give you the extra 50,000 for the drainage
Contingency.
improvements.
Okay.
I agree.
Motion made.
Second.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, you have adopted the two assessment rates. They will be included in the resolution. And then that resolution will be circulated to the tax collector so that they can set, and the property appraiser, so that they can include it in their information in the tax bill.
Perfect.
You're done with that topic. The balance, the budget will be adopted in the future. And I believe that gets us to the last topic of the landowners meeting.
Which is the annual
What do you
landowners
mean the
meeting.
budget will be adopted in the future?
The budget will be adopted in the future. Yes, you'll bring back.
Yeah, we
Final
so
budget.
Okay.
All
Right, this is my number.
Those are the
Okay.
numbers that you can work on.
You guys okay?
Yes, yes, sir. Excuse me. So the annual landowners meeting is currently set for September 17, 2022, beginning at 10 a.m.
Guys, can we get a second here, please? Let's wrap this up.
So, Mr. Chairman, the board needs to take official action to officially set September 17, 2022 at 10 a.m. as the annual landowners meeting, and then to authorize us to put together the notice that goes in the newspaper twice. There will be a notice that goes out to all the landowners by mail. It will describe the process for granting a proxy, a voting proxy, at the board meeting if someone is not able to attend. the annual landowners meeting, and it will also describe who's up for office and a little bit about the election of a supervisor to a 3-year term. That's all in the notice that will go by mail. And I would also, based upon past conversations, I also prepared a letter to be sent to the landowners from me that generally talks about the topic of the right-of-way and the fact that it's an easement but still under the control and authority of the board. Kind of answered your questions that you were talking about. And so that would be outlined in the letter that I prepared.
You're telling a letter that discusses only that issue?
No, it's
that
going to come in the
issue.
whole package.
It would be that issue together with the notice of the annual landowners meeting and other discussion about the annual landowners meeting, so that it's in there. And the permit application process description I also put a little bit of that in there because that's the other big topic. So, if November 17, 2022 at 10 a.m. at this location is...
You said November.
I'm sorry. Kill me and put me out of my misery. September 17, 2022 at 10 a.m. at this location. If the board will approve that as the annual landowners meeting and authorize us to do the noticing, we'll take care of the rest.
So approved.
Approved.
Do you need a motion?
A motion to approve
made.
that date, yes.
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so we'll send the letter, we'll send the notice, we'll put up the notice, and then, and the last thing is this. The Board of Supervisors meeting can occur and normally does occur right after the annual landowners meeting for that month, so that you'll do them back to back and be done, and then you won't have to have another meeting 3 or 4 days later. Yes. So if that's the board needs to authorize me to do a notice to change that meeting date for the Board of Supervisors meeting to September 17, 2022.
Motion made.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. At that board meeting, you will elect the officers of the board. That's the main reason for that meeting. And then maybe the final budget adoption will also be there as a part of that meeting as well.
Perfect.
We'll swear in the newly elected supervisor, and that will all be good.
If we could just say one thing. If anyone's here is going to run, I'm obviously not running. If anyone's interested in running, if they want to just please limit it to 5 minutes. Say something. If you want anyone to know or vote for you or whatever, if anyone's interested in running, I'm not running, so I didn't know if anyone was interested or not.
Jackson, son.
John has put his
Did you want to take the
has
floor for a
put,
minute just to say
I'm
something?
going to take the floor. I know they put on the SCUD website and also Neighbor. I'm John Salucci. I want to run for the board. My background's on there, but basically my work experience, I'm still working. It's a lot of Fortune 100 companies, business, financial, planning, and I think that my personal opinion is they need a little bit more structure and organization for the board for the benefit of all the people here. And in the interest of full disclosure, I told Mr. Pringle this. I also am an attorney, but I'm licensed in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, where I'm originally from, not Florida. So I cannot practice law in Florida. But my legal thinking and training still comes into effect reading the statutes, writing letters to the DEP, Army Corps of Engineers, asking for grants, and everything else. I think there's a lot of things that this district could do, because everything I've read on how this is structured here, I see this district physically, its geographic location, as like a little Dutch boy with a finger in the Dutch. So much water from Okeechobee on down is coming right through here. So why are more people helping us pay to maintain the flow of the water like a toll booth? We're like a toll booth, but no one's paying the toll.
The homeowners are paying the toll.
Yeah, homeowners paying the toll for everybody else's benefit around here. So, that's one of the things I'd like to bring to the board, is that skill and experience to try to help them, have a little
What
bit
street do you
more.
live on? What street do you live on?
Strike is illegal. I'm the turquoise. I'm also a licensed builder. I sat for the exam 5 years when I moved here. I'm also a contractor, general contractor. for the state, but I spend most of my time doing consulting work for a biotech company right now.
So you built
But
the
I
house?
built my house physically. I only had a couple subs on it.
Why didn't you strike land?
Because that was a piece of property I liked, because there's a lake back there, and I negotiated a really good deal back in 2018 when I bought it, and I liked it because it's like lakefront properties, waterfront view, really. It's a cute little lake, and I like corner properties.
So I personally, people, you choose why they chose in our neighborhood, why they didn't choose to build in another community.
I personally don't want an HOA. I don't want somebody telling me that I'm like person who think flamingo. I can take a fish.
Ben, we have to finish.
20 minutes from the airport.
We have to approve the meeting minutes, and then we have to approve the bank statements and the financial reports and the bills.
So anyway, vote for me if you want.
Okay. Anybody else? We're good?
Good.
We're gonna move on. Motion made to approve the June 27th, 2022 meeting minutes. Second?
Second. Or aye.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. And motion made to approve the June 22nd bank statements and financial reports.
Second.
Can we do both? Okay, also the July
Yes, we
22nd?
can do all three.
Okay, bank statements and financial reports. August 2022 bills and August 2022 financial reports. Motion made.
To the website.
All in favor, say aye.
Hey, girl.
Thank you.
Motion made to adjourn.
Yes.
Do I have to, is that a motion?
Yes.
What's it, there's a second?
Alan.
Jim, did you 3-0? You right?
I think there's more. Yeah, there's just still on both sides. And again, I wasn't there.
I will get you a resolution.
Show some background.